Ladies and gentlemen, our referee has called a stop to this contest, declaring the winner by knockout and new MMA show! Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another exciting round of and new MMA show. I am your host, Michael Hansen, and I do all kinds of omnipotent things with microphones because I am an MC, ring announcer, and MMA cage announcer, and I'm speaking very quietly, much more quiet than normal because my son is sleeping in a room just above me, so I'm going to try to get through this show tonight without waking him up. And I'm joined, as I always am, by my two friends who bring MMA punditry to new heights. Introducing first, from New York, wearing the Pride hat, Mark Priaulx. What's up, buddy?
What's up, boys? How we doing? We have an absurd amount of MMA coming up this weekend. So there's a lot to do on this show, and being that I would like to go to sleep like your son at some point tonight, I will not waste any time telling you about my week.
Okay. And introducing next, from the Sunshine State of Florida, the Nicaragua Nightmare, sporting the fresh haircut, Omar Artolo. What's up, my friend?
What's going on? Haircuts by Fran. You already know.
Cuts by Fran.
Trademark.
Repping the wife. Yeah. Had a flat tire for the first time in a long time.
Ooh.
Found out electric cars don't have spare tires, so fuck. And it took the dealership 12 hours to replace my tire, but at least replacing that tire was free. So,
Okay.
What a day. Missed some training, but I at least got there at the end of the day to do some training. But
Nice.
Mondays are usually my day to be there, and it just didn't work out that way.
Sounds like a day.
Yeah.
Well, because of if anybody who's not watching this on the podcast version, I'm in a new location. I'm in New York for two events this week. One being I emceed an award show in the cosmetics industry last night, and this coming Saturday I'm ring announcing for Star Boxing once again. And anytime I come to New York to do some shows or a show, I get to see my folks. So I'm at my parents' house right now, and they get to see my kid. So everybody wins. That being said, let's get on with the show. And
Except you being able to talk.
Except for me being able to talk at a reasonable volume. So we'll see how it goes. If you're listening to this right now, or if you're on YouTube, drop a comment below and let me know thumbs up or thumbs down if this is a more sexy version of my speaking voice, or if you guys miss me speaking a little bit more on voice. But as Mark alluded to just before, we do have quite the rundown for you for this evening. We're going to start, as we always do, with our first segment, On the Marquee. We're going to talk about fights from this past weekend, UFC Fight Night, Font versus Vera. We're going to discuss the result from the boxing of this past week, Taylor versus Serrano. Then we're going to hop into our lightning round, talk about some other UFC fights from last weekend. We're going to find out who rose and who fell in our very own ranking system, the Priaulx Rankings. We're going to see what's new in the headlines, going inside the MMA sphere, see what Omar has for us this week. And then we're going to hop into our previews. We have previews from PFL, Bellator, and a UFC pay-per-view all coming up for you this weekend. And we're going to talk about just about all of it. And then we're going to end with a little bit of trivia, as we often do. So with that being said, if you are watching this on YouTube, thank you so much. Drop a comment. Let us know if you're a first-time listener. Give us any feedback you have. And, of course, let us know also if you are a long-time listener. We will reply to every and all comments. If you want audio only, find us wherever you get your podcasts. We can join you on your commute, perhaps. And, of course, find us on social media and connect with us there. We are at And New MMA Show in all the social places. All right, let's get into this. This week, the name on the marquee has got to be Marlon Chito Vera, who this past Saturday night at the UFC Apex in Las Vegas defeated Rob Font by unanimous decision. The scores read 48-47, 49-46, and 49-46 on the judges' scorecards. Mark, let me send it over to you first. This was a huge, probably biggest win of his career right now for Chito Vera. What were your thoughts in the aftermath?
I mean, what a fight. So many different like storylines coming out of that fight that I want to note. But first off, I need to give props to Marlon Vera right out of the gate. There was a time as recently as 2018, maybe even 2019, where Marlon Vera kind of felt like he was just going to be a good, fun fighter who like never came near the top necessarily. And this man is now ranked number 5 in the world. So huge respect to Marlon Vera for the rise that he's on. Second off, what a damn fight. Holy hell. Both guys are so damn tough. So props to both of them for the entertainment that they gave us in that one. And third off, that was one of the most unique fights I've ever seen. I'm struggling to think of a fight where the guy who was looking way slicker and landing way more is the guy that lost a decision. Like, yeah, we've seen that guy get finished, or we've seen that guy then get out wrestled when the opponent changes the game plan and lose a decision because of that. But we've never seen that guy who was landing way more on the feet like that lose the decision in a fight that stayed on the feet the entire time. It's pretty wild to think about. I mean, I shouldn't say never. Maybe it's happened, but I can't think of any that were comparable to the way that played out. Mm-hmm. But it was the right call, in my opinion. Of course, round 1 went to Rob Font. He came out looking absolutely surgical. He was landing everything he threw in round 1. And Vera kind of came out and took round 1 to compute. Like, he watched how Rob Font was moving, how he was throwing his punches. I'm sure he made notes on where he thought he could find openings. And honestly, he barely even threw a punch. He almost entirely kicked. It was like he consciously came out and said, let me not have any boxing exchanges at all yet until I kind of get a feel for how Font is moving and throwing. So if you watch that round 1 back, it's weird because he almost never throws a punch. Then round 2 is more of the same until Vera drops Font with the left hook late. And honestly, on the rewatch, I didn't even think it was enough to steal the round. Live, I was like, oh, I think he might have stole it. On the rewatch, I'm like, I think that was still Font's. I had Font so far ahead prior to that. It was almost like a carbon copy of round 1 where Font was kind of just steamrolling him until that happened. So at that point, now that I've rewatched it, I still had Rob Font up 2-0. But that is the last round I gave him. Round 3 was similar again, but when Cheeto drops him in round 3 with the knee, he pours it on much more on the ground, and I thought in that case it was enough to swing the round to him. But these rounds 2 and 3, they do raise an interesting debate on like how to score fights in terms of volume versus damage. It was very unique to see rounds like that, but I think Vera did do enough to take round 3. In round 4, we get the sweet chin music from Vera, which was incredible. Dropping Font again, he wins that round. And then round 5, he's winning throughout and punctuates it at the end with another sweet chin music in the same fight. Who the hell pulls it off once, let alone twice? So it was 48-47 Vera on my card, and I left that fight so impressed with Marlon Vera. What jumps off the page is that he might be the calmest fighter in the history of the UFC. His heart rate might be 0. Like, he looks like he could take a nap mid-fight. He's so good defensively. He blocks so much with his elbows and his forearms and his wrists in that high guard. So many things bounce off him, glance off him. He absorbed 223 strikes and looked like he went for a walk in the park at the end of that fight. Mm-hmm. And yeah, he's not the best boxer or the best kicker or really the best anything, to be quite honest. But he is a fighter, and he presents a tremendous variety of danger. He is dangerous in so many different ways. And even in that fight, he drops Font with a left hook. He drops him with a knee. He drops him with 2 big kicks. If only one of those drops was an elbow, he would have dropped him with every body part you can drop someone with. So he left Rob Font's face butchered. I mean, it was literally grotesque. And again, props to Rob Font, because that guy never even considered quitting, and he had chances to, especially at the end of round 3. I wasn't sure he was going to get off the canvas at the end of round 3, but what a night for Vera. He had a great post-fight interview afterward, came off super likable, and I loved that he said Priaulx told him, your mind has finally caught up to your body, because that feels incredibly accurate watching him fight, and he is going to have a huge fight coming up on the horizon here.
Absolutely. All right, Omar, let's bring you in here. What were your thoughts in the aftermath of this huge win by Marlon Cheeto Vera?
So, I'm not surprised. That's my initial reaction.
Oh yeah, we all took Vera, guys. Good for us. We nailed it.
I've been telling you guys for years, Chito Vera is that dude. He's had his ups and he's had his downs, but I've seen infinite potential in that kid, and he's just needed a good spark to set him off. And I think we've long since passed where that spark hit. But watching him this past week, the cardio on that kid, I think, was the one thing that I took away from it. Is one of the scariest things I've ever seen. He might even have better cardio. I forgot to even
mention that, so I'm glad you did.
Yeah, his cardio. I mean, when we talk about good cardio, one of the people that comes to mind is Colby Covington. After the end of that Jorge Masvidal fight, you could see him going at least a couple more rounds. Chito Vera looked like he could have fought 5 more rounds, 10 more rounds. He didn't even look like he was breathing hard after beating the shit out of Rob Font. And regardless of, the strike differential, which I think set a record for winning with the lowest strike differential in UFC history, he still was able to put power shots together. He was still able to keep his composure. He was still able to keep his cardio in line to the point where, again, he looked like he could have just done that entire thing 2 or 3 more times without breaking a sweat. It was terrifying. That was the biggest takeaway that I had from that fight, apart from everything else that Mark just said. But the cardio is absolutely killer and might present a real problem in that division with a lot of people, including Aldo if they have a rematch, because there might be a very different Chito now than what Aldo faced just a couple of years ago. So,
yeah, that being said, Omar, let me stay with you. Let's just go right into what you think is going to be next or should be next for Chito Vera. You think the rematch with Aldo is the thing that should be happening at this point for him?
As interesting as I think it would be, I don't know if it's the right thing to do next. I think at this point, and I think he was calling for it, I'm down for a Dominic Cruz fight. Dominic Cruz has kind of been jawing a lot about not wanting to fight people below him. He doesn't want to be the ladder to people to climb on. That's totally fine. Now Chito's ahead of him, so now he doesn't really have an excuse. I know Dom is looking at different people for a fight, but I think that Chito fight is very, very interesting. But if you don't go down that route, then I would have to think Peter Yan would probably be the next best course of action. Stylistically, that clash right there is money-made violence right there. And I really couldn't tell you exactly who wins that fight. That would be a fight of pure will and determination up until the very end.
Mark, what about you? Any names in the upper echelon at bantamweight that you want to see Chito Vera fight next?
Yeah, before I throw a name out quick, I just wanted to say I wanted to mention, what must it feel like being Rob Font, landing on that dude 1 million times and never hurting him one single time?
Yeah.
Like, it's got to be the most frightening feel. Like, you got to feel like you're fighting a robot. Like, he's probably like, I don't understand how I can't hurt this guy. And I don't understand it either. I don't understand how Vera couldn't get hurt by anything.
It makes you wonder too what it actually felt like, because when you hit somebody, especially like good, there's almost a softness to it. But a lot of times when guys are ready for it, there's a little bit of resistance even when you're actually hitting somebody. Like you'll feel the solidity to somebody. And so I wonder if it just felt like hitting a brick wall for the entire time that he was throwing all of those punches.
I do wonder. I think it's a few things. I think he's stupid tough. Yeah. I think, as I mentioned last week, that maybe Font's power is not quite what people thought, which Cody taking so many shots from him made me start to think. Yeah. And I think Vera really finds a way for shots to bounce a little bit. Like, they look like they're hitting him, but they're not hitting him as flush as you think. But anyway, to go back to the match, man.
Yeah, do it.
I'm just so interested in the way that fight played out. It was a wild fight.
Yeah.
I think Vera's matchup depends a lot on what they do with Aljamain Sterling. If Aljamain Sterling is going to get Jose, whatever reason TJ is not ready or it's not going to work out, then I think Vera versus Dominic Cruz is a perfect fight. And that's where I go. If Aljamain Sterling is going to get Dillashaw, I think they're probably going to make Aldo and Cruz, which leaves Vera without that fight. So when you get to there, he could fight Corey Sandhagen, even though Corey's coming off a couple losses. That would be a banger. I almost didn't want to say Jan because I want Jan to fight Merab, but goddamn, as Omar said, Vera versus Jan would be a friggin' crazy fight. So Yeah, there's options. Bottom line is they're all good, and he's going to be in a huge fight, whoever it is.
I feel like I'm going to say this now. You guys may disagree with me. I want to know whether or not you do. I'm at a point where I kind of want Dominic Cruz to retire. Agree? Disagree?
He's winning, so I can't say that.
I know he won. He's coming off two decision wins in a row. One a split, one unanimous against not terrible competition. That being said, I'm just like, I don't know.
I normally feel like when guys should retire is when they don't look like themselves anymore, which is why even in his win streak, I still think Arlovsky may want to think about it. But Dominic Cruz looks fantastic when he fights still. Like, his movement is still outrageous. I think the biggest mark on his record so far was that Cody Garbrandt fight where he got styled on. I mean, Jesus Christ. But I mean, his comeback since then has been short of the Henry Cejudo no nonsense Peterson debacle. We haven't really had a mark on his record either. I mean, he's been pretty spot on the entire time, and he's looked good. His performances have looked good. So
yeah,
I can't agree with this one, unfortunately.
I would need to see him look a lot worse to say that.
As good as he is as a fighter, and he's one of the greats, I think he's just as great of a color guy on the table, on the mic. And I just don't want him to take any terrible damage in his later years. I want him to be able to walk away on his own power and just continue to kill it and make a killing at the commentator's table.
Let me ask you this: he fights Chito Vera next, and he beats him. Are you going to feel different?
No, because Chito Vera is going to ruin him.
No, I said, what if he beats him? Like, we don't know yet.
Well, of course. Mike's like, that's not going to be reality.
If he uses a ton of movement and scores on point and wins on points against Chito Vera, I'll be like, all right, he'll keep going. But
that's what I'm saying. I got to see one of these guys starch him to be like, okay, the title dream is dead. Until I know that title dream is dead, who am I to tell him to stop?
Yeah, it's true. All right, sorry for the detour.
Wait, because you brought it up now. You opened the door.
Okay.
I'm gonna give this hot take. Dominic Cruz is not the best color commentator.
Oh, I think he's so good.
That dude. Matter of fact, that dude is like cinnamon. If you just put cinnamon in your mouth, you're gonna choke and you're gonna die. But if you add cinnamon to things like milk and chocolate and other ingredients that are good, then it works. But you can't have Dominic Cruz by himself by any stretch of the imagination. That man is a Sahara desert of dry. Okay?
I might surprise Mike here by completely agreeing with that
statement. My gosh. Who do you guys love on color?
He's super knowledgeable.
He is.
He sucks the life out of fights. Like, if
I
it was not
know
the
what you
other
mean.
guys like keeping him up, it's bad. He needs to be with the right people.
The sad thing is I know how much he despises working with DC on the commentator's table because of how much DC apparently doesn't do his own work or whatever the case is. But DC is the best. Dude, he's the 100%. Best one to be with Dom because of how crazy he is.
Yeah, knockouts happen and Dom's like, oh, he catches him with the left.
Well, that's...
we need more, Dom.
And Dom's like, well, he should have had his right hand up. He's been doing it all fight.
DC probably
like,
is the best.
Oh, your mom, he killed him.
I don't know.
DC's pants are off.
I think DC probably holds the record for most quotable moments from the color. And
I mean, Michael Bisping is working his way up.
If anything, we got.
I love Felder.
We got Thug Rose out of DC, and that's just lives in eternity now.
Yeah, but look at Bisping.
We have so much to do. Let's get back on track.
You're right. Bisping's eye. He said a joke about his eye this past weekend, and it was glorious. Okay, I'm done. Go for it.
Believe me, it really helps to see in fights.
Bisping is he's gold. He's gold.
Yeah, he's
all
great.
Right.
He's great.
I agree. In terms of going back to Cheeto's next fight, I think Aldo, the rematch makes a lot of sense. They're both streaking. They're both coming off wins now against Rob Font. As for Rob Font, let's talk about him real quick. I don't think we have. He's now dropped 2 in a row maybe a matchup against Corey Sandhagen, who has also lost his last 2 fights. That might make sense. What do you guys think? Mark, why don't you take this one first?
To be honest, I didn't think about Corey. I was thinking that Font had to go down, whereas, yes, Corey's lost 2 in a row, but he's still ranked ahead of Font. But I guess that's possible. The person I thought of first was Frankie Edgar, just because they never crossed paths and are both losing right now, and I think that's a really cool style matchup. But then Kyler Phillips popped into my head, who I feel like deserves another shot at a ranked fighter. And I know that's a big step up in the rankings, but Font has lost 2 in a row, and there's some questions about him now, so I don't think it's crazy. And I think that fight would be incredible between Phillips and Font. So I doubt we get that one, but I like that one.
Omar?
Yeah. I don't know if I'm sold on that Kyler Phillips one. That's
Come on, let's go.
It's like throwing a 7-year-old into the middle of the ocean there.
Dude, he's good, man.
I mean, Rob Font didn't drop down that far. I was thinking somebody more like Song Yadong if you're going to go down the list a little bit. That's probably as far as I'd go for right now.
Kyler Phillips beat Song Yadong.
When did this happen?
I mean, Song Yadong is ranked above him. Don't get me wrong.
All right, well,
but I'm saying, don't hate on my man Kyler Phillips.
I'm just saying.
Let me jump in real quick.
Let me say this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know you said the same, that you also wanted to tap in. The only reason Kyler Phillips is not ranked is because of that bullshit loss to Raleigh Paiva that he didn't lose. If it wasn't for that, he'd still be in the rankings.
Well,
hey, Kyler Phillips, real quick, Kyler Phillips, I've said it before, the Steph Curry of MMA.
No.
Call back to my own stupid comparison.
Oh, but yeah, Corey Sandhagen. That's actually a really good pick. I hadn't even really considered Corey either, but when you said it and when you explained it, that honestly seems to make the most amount of sense, to be quite honest. I'm down for that.
I'm also thinking for Font's health, maybe it should be Frankie, just so he's not fighting someone who's going to further destroy his face, and his face gets a little bit of a break. Like
Rob
fight a wrestler.
Face? Yes.
Yes.
But yes. I was just going to make this point, Mark. I actually love the call out of Frankie. Frankie was like my number 2 idea for Font because I actually like that fight a lot for Frankie as a guy who's a legend and is obviously in the later years of his career. I would love for him to fight a guy like Font who, skill for skill, I think is going to be a great matchup, but also Rob Font is not a guy at bantamweight who's just going to blow Frankie away like he has in so many of his recent fights. I mean, he got knocked out by Brian Ortega. He got beat up by Max Holloway. He got TKO'd by Chan Sung Jung. He got flying kneed into another dimension by Corey Sandhagen. And he got front kicked into the face by Chito Vera. I mean, the guy in the past, 4 years has taken a lot of damage from other bantamweights who bring and featherweights who bring a lot more firepower to the ring than he does at this point. Enter Rob Font. It could be a great fight.
Yeah, it kind of keeps them both safe. If Frankie
for sure
loses, it's probably not going to be by knockout. And if Font loses, it's going to be probably via wrestling, and his face doesn't have to be re-butchered after this butchering.
See, if there's somebody that I was going to argue should probably look into retirement, I would have said Frankie Edgar before.
Yeah.
I mean, man. This is a guy that used to spend his career priding himself on the fact that he had the chin that wouldn't go. And now his chin goes every other time.
He's close. If Rob Font knocked him out, I think that might be it.
Yeah, man. All right, let's move on. Is there anything else you guys want to say about Chito? All right.
No, sir.
Because we just witnessed the greatest women's boxing match in history on paper, as well as promotionally, probably, in being Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano. Let's just touch on it. I know this is and new MMA show, but in honor of our boy Tommy O'Neill over at Boxing, let's just touch on it real quick. Mark, Katie Taylor took the decision, split decision over Amanda Serrano. Let me just, I have the scores right here. Pull up these scores. I believe it is 96-93, 97-93 for Taylor, and 96-94 for Serrano. Watching the fight, what were your thoughts? Do you think the right woman walked away the winner?
Yeah, so as you said, I know we're an MMA podcast, but we got to talk about this fight. Of course, we did have Tommy on last week to preview it, so it feels only right to touch on it now. But even if we hadn't had Tommy on, that event felt so huge. The Garden was absolutely electric. The fight over-delivered. I think we'd be here talking about it no matter what. But before I go on, I just want to give a quick shout out to Tommy from Unboxing. He gave us the Shakur Stevenson lock, Shakur Stevenson by decision, and it hit. So he gave you that one. And though he was torn, he did pick Katie Taylor to win a close fight. So he went 2 for 2 on those.
Perfect,
so props
too.
to him.
That was like perfect.
Yeah. So that was a crazy fight. As I said, round 5 was a classic round that will be on highlight reels for a long time. Same with the final 30 seconds of that fight when they just stood in the middle, Max Holloway style, and threw down. Anyone who doubted those girls' ability to deliver in that huge of a spot was shut up very emphatically. That was incredible. I always love seeing adjustments happen in boxing because it's a sport that only features punching, so it's harder to adjust. Like in MMA, if the striking's not going well, you can say, all right, I'm going to shoot a double. You don't have those kind of options in boxing. So for Katie Taylor to take the beating that she took in round 5, to reset herself and have her best rounds of the entire fight late to close it out was amazing. Now, obviously I'm an MMA guy. I'm not going to pretend I'm a boxing scoring expert the same way that I am an MMA scoring expert. Well, I'm not going to call myself an expert in either one, but you know what I'm trying to say. But I did actually score that fight a draw. I scored it 95-95, both live and on the rewatch. I didn't change my take on a single round on the rewatch. I thought, I'll say real quick for the sake of it, because I feel like a million people are talking about it. I thought Katie won round 1. I thought she made Amanda miss and used her footwork and landed more cleanly. I thought Serrano just edged round 2. Not a lot happened. I thought Taylor absolutely took 3 by landing the cleaner shots. Serrano was missing again. I liked Serrano's work more in round 4, so I had a 2-2, and that's where the pressure started to turn. Round 5 was obviously incredible. Instant classic round. Both girls bit down. It was rock'em sock'em robots at one point. I thought Katie Taylor was going down 2 different times. Somehow she didn't. But round 5 was Amanda's by a million. But as we know, it's round by round scoring, and without a knockdown in boxing, it's still just 10-9 for Amanda. So that's what it is. I had a 3-2 Amanda at that point. Round 6 was really close. I still gave it to Amanda. Round 7 was Amanda. So I had a 5-2. I thought Taylor stood her ground, came back, edged round 8, and then I thought she really clearly won rounds 9 and 10 to end it 5-5. So to me, it was a draw. I understand Katie winning because some of my closest rounds, like round 2, for example, maybe another one, are ones that I gave to Amanda, so I could see how that went the other way, and it ends up with Katie winning. Some people had the much wider scores for Katie. I don't understand. That was absolutely a close fight, no matter how you slice it. But props to both girls. It was incredible. It absolutely feels like we're going to have to do this one again. They both seemed like they were down to run it back, which was nice to hear from Taylor because there's definitely a world where she could have escaped and been like, oh, on to the next. I got that one done. And she immediately said, I'll do it again. So I'm glad she had that awareness that it is something that everyone feels like she has to do again. But yeah, hopefully we get it again. It sounds like it could be in Ireland, which would be unreal. And I will certainly be watching.
Omar, what were your thoughts in the aftermath of this historic fight, and who did you have on your scorecard?
So after the 5th round, I stopped scoring. It was
Fair enough.
It was pure mayhem. I was watching it with one of my wife's cousins came down from New York, and so we got the family all together, and we ended up watching that boxing fight and the UFC fight all together in the house. So when that fight came on, come to find out, actually, her cousin knows the godfather of Amanda Serrano. They're all from the Bronx.
Oh, wow.
Cool.
So there was a little bit more investment in the household than normal. And so after round 5, once she rocked Katie Taylor, all hell broke loose. So I definitely stopped scoring, but I will say that it was an exciting fight. It was probably one of the most exciting boxing fights I've seen in a long time. There's, I don't think that kind of electricity and that kind of excitement happens very often, unfortunately, anymore in the boxing realm without there being 2, crazy marquee fights like a Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder and things like that. But Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano 100% sold out, 100% gave us exactly what we were asking for, what I love from boxing. And it really got to a point, some of those rounds, where they were just kind of like, fuck it. And they just bit down in their mouthpieces and they just threw. And it was great. I want to be very adamant about this point, regardless of who does or doesn't listen. They need to cut the shit with treating women fighters like they're completely different from men fighters. This 2-minute boxing round shit is disgusting. Make it 3 rounds or 3 minutes. Stupid. 10 rounds? Why not 12? There's no actual viable reason for those rules to be different from men. So somebody needs to fix it. Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor proved very much so that they could have gone an extra minute each round and an extra 2 rounds total. So
it's similar to me how in the WNBA and in women's basketball overall, they play with a smaller ball and with a 3-point line that's closer. And I've thought similar things, like why not just play the same game with the same dimensions?
Well, women's hands are smaller, so I get that.
I mean,
it's the same kind of logic. It's instead of equality, it's equity. It's like, oh, because women are smaller, I don't know, whatever you want to say, biologically different from men, we're going to change the rules to have more equity. I'm not saying I agree with it. In fact, I'm with Omar. I would rather it be completely just the same game, the same sport.
I mean, we're getting into a different debate now. I actually think the basketball one makes sense just because it's harder for obviously not all of them, but it's harder in general for them to reach from the men's 3-point line. The hands are smaller in general, so I get that. A time thing has no relation to sex. It's just time. So that I fully agree with Omar. I don't understand that. And think about how much more exciting that fight would have been if we had 10 more minutes of it, or even if it was 2 more rounds. Imagine Katie Taylor having to survive a whole nother minute in round 5.
That's my
everything's
point.
different. And I absolutely agree they need to make that switch.
Yeah, that could have been a knockout. That could have been a very minimum a knockdown with an extra 60 seconds because that girl had her hurt with like a minute and a half into that round, maybe a little bit less than that. She would have had a whole other minute to work this girl, and it would have been a completely different fight.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I hope, women's boxing is not new, but I feel like this fight has the potential to, I don't know, bring a lot more attention to women's boxing overall. Almost similar to, what Ronda Rousey did for women's MMA. Like there were female MMA fighters, but when Ronda Rousey came on the scene, it was like, oh, now there's women's MMA is like on the map, man. So hoping this opens up doors for female boxers all over the place. Very cool.
Totally agree.
Yeah. Anything else you guys want to say about this incredible boxing match before we dive back into MMA?
The size difference. The size difference between Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor was super obvious if you couldn't tell. Katie Taylor was much thicker and much bigger than Amanda Serrano. Just look at their necks. Look at their necks. They're completely different. And so I don't think enough people are giving Amanda Serrano credit for coming up. I think it was 2 weight classes in order to fight that girl, and borderline almost knocked her out a few times. So much credit to Amanda Serrano for putting up a hell of a fight.
Well, if you are watching this on YouTube, go ahead and drop a comment and let us know who you think won the fight. Do you think Amanda Serrano got robbed? Do you think she was the rightful winner and should have gone home with the gold? Let us know down in the comments. All right, boys, let us jump back into MMA, back into the UFC, back into UFC Fight Night, Font versus Vera. We're going to throw the rest of these bouts into our lightning round. Now, if you don't know, if you're joining us for the first time, first of all, thank you. Our lightning round is when we throw some fights into this round, and I challenge these 2 gentlemen to give me their most lightningest takes. All right, folks, a sentence or 2. Here we go. UFC Fight Night, Font versus Vera. In the heavyweight division, Andrei Arlovski defeated Jake Collier via split decision. Omar, go first.
I thought I had that pick a couple times in that fight. It was a little closer than I thought it was going to be. Arlovski did show he had a decent chin, though, in that fight, though. So, good win for Arlovski.
Mark, take it.
Yeah, close-ass fight. I don't like the narrative of Collier having absolutely won this fight. Like, even John Anik was coming out on Twitter and saying, like, oh, Jake, don't worry, we know you won the fight. Like, wow. I don't like it. You want to go pride scoring? Then okay, because the only clear round was round 1, which was for Collier. But we scored by rounds, and 2 and 3 were razor close. So someone seeing those for Arlovski is completely acceptable. So I don't like this take of, like, that this was some brutally bad decision, because I don't see that.
Mark, sticking with you in the featherweight division, Joe Anderson Brito TKO's Andre Touchy Feely in the very first round. What are your thoughts?
That was one hell of an overhand, right? I said last week I didn't know why Brito. Also, they're changing his name now. Some of them are saying Brito, some of them are saying Brito. I don't know. He was Brito in the beginning, so I don't know. But yeah, I was saying last week that I didn't know why Brito deserved this fight after losing to Fialho in his debut. I still don't know why he deserved it, but he certainly proved he can do it. We knew he came out hot. Last fight, he couldn't find that big shot and ended up getting picked apart more or less. This time he finds it. Tough loss for Feely. It kind of starting to feel like Feely is never going to break through and just always be like a borderline ranked level fighter, which sucks for him. But yeah, huge win for Brito.
Omar, take it.
Yeah, that was a bad TKO, man. He cracked Feely right in the mouth. Feely just spun around, fell right down, and he just got hammered into existence, out of existence from there. So, good win for Brito, whatever it is. It was a hell of a fight.
Okay, in the lightweight division, Grant Dawson submits Jared Gordon by submission via rear naked choke in round number 3. Omar, let's stick with you. What are your thoughts?
Boy, Grant Dawson pulled that one out of his ass because that boy had no gas left in his tank. He had one big explosive move left, and it paid off for him. So, kudos to him, but the boy needs to start running up some hills or something because he's got to figure that out. He's got to do it.
Mark, take it.
Yeah, Grant Dawson, as we know, is a really tricky grappler. He's got a beautiful single leg. He gets his hooks into you from every angle in seconds. But as Omar said, he hit gut check time again in this fight. He clearly won round 2, but it was a tiring round. And then in round 3, he couldn't get the takedown. Gordon was walking him down, and he was tired as shit. And last time Dawson was in that spot, he wilted in the draw with Rick Glenn, where he let himself get beat 10-8 in the final round. But here, to his credit, he rose to it. He snatched an absolutely filthy choke that came completely out of nowhere, again, because of how quick he gets his damn hooks in. And props to him on the win. I agree he's got to run up some hills, though, but the Dawson hype train, I think, has kept rolling up the tracks here.
Okay, back down to the featherweights. Darren the Damage Elkins gets another W on his record, winning by unanimous decision over Tristan Connolly. Mark, let's stick with you. What are your thoughts on the 30-27s across the board?
Yeah, I got this one wrong. I thought Connolly was too good of a scrambler to get Darren Elkins, but nope. Elkins did what Elkins does. I think what I've realized from this one is that unless you can either crack or tap Darren Elkins, you can't win in what's just like a scrap and scramble contest. Like, you can't fight a Darren Elkins fight with Darren Elkins. And Connolly just didn't have enough power to threaten him and couldn't keep Elkins off him.
Omar, what are your thoughts on the Damage getting the UD?
I don't know if referees are enough for fights like that. I think you're going to need a lifeguard going forward because Connolly was drowning for at least 2 rounds in that fight. It was nice. Thank you. I appreciate it. It was what Darren Elkins does best, man. And just like Mark said, unless you're able to do something to Darren Elkins where his legs just start doing weird things and start going out from under him, Darren Elkins is just going to drag you into deep waters, almost quite literally, and suffocate you. And there's pictures of Connolly that are just so disrespectful because of just how bad it looks like he's gasping from air from every different angle. So, credit to Elkins, man. Another good win.
Dude, if I ever get an opportunity to jump from ring announcer down to the commentary table, like if I need to fill in or something, if the opportunity ever presents itself, I'm totally stealing that line. Like, so-and-so doesn't need a ref. He needs a lifeguard because he is drowning in there. Oh, my God, the line.
Really great.
All right, moving up to the middleweights. Krzysztof Jotko gets the UD over Gerald Meerschaert, earning a 30-27 on all 3 scorecards. Omar, take it.
Yeah, I think we kind of saw this coming last week when we were talking about it. You know, as good as Gerald is, there's still holes in that game, and I don't think he's as efficient as somebody like the light heavyweight.
Jotko?
No. The light heavyweight, the guy who always submits people in the last second.
Oh, Paul Craig.
Paul Craig, thank you. Paul Craig is a lot more efficient with his use of jiu-jitsu and definitely has more of a game plan even when he's in bad positions. Meerschaert seems to sort of kind of piss in the wind, hoping for something to happen. Yeah. But Jocko is way too technical for it. He was too technical for it. Stopped him everywhere, even on the ground. It was a very, very solid win for Jocko, and he made Meerschaert gas really badly by the end of that fight.
All right, Mark, take it.
Yeah, Meerschaert has shown over and over again how dangerous he is, and it's hard to make him look that non-dangerous. So that was pretty impressive. I underestimated just how well-rounded Jocko was, and he really came into that with a perfect game plan to nullify Meerschaert that he stuck to all fight. His speed was a huge factor. It gave Meerschaert a lot of problems, and that was the best I've seen him look in a while. So that was a good win for Jocko for sure.
Yeah, we disagreed with that, actually, because I did not like Meerschaert striking, like, at all.
Yeah, all. I think I got fooled in the Muradov fight because it looked like it was starting to be more dangerous. I think it's only because of the speed. I think it was because he could hang with Muradov speed-wise, and Jocko was just so much faster that Meerschaert looked like his typical stuck-in-the-sand self.
I was screaming, head movement! Head movement! Got nothing.
All right, and the featured bout on the prelims, a clash in the heavyweight division, in what John Anik revealed to be the record holder for the biggest, what's the word? Biggest split?
Spread?
Biggest spread. I think he said like plus 1,100 or something like that.
I know Romanov was minus 2,000. I know that.
Yeah, Jesus. Yes, so Alexander Romanov got it done, unsurprisingly, I suppose. Round one submission via Americana, nasty Americana. Man, those shoulder submissions, man, it just makes me like squirm. Against Chase Sherman, like we said. Mark, why don't you take it?
Yeah, Omar tried to pick the biggest upset in the history of the UFC. Didn't work out. Chase Sherman was sent in there to be food, and food is what he was. Romanov is now 5-0 in the UFC. He's 16-0 overall. He has had some bad breaks with opponents pulling out, which has kind of slowed his rise more than it should have been slowed because he keeps having to fight lower-level guys as replacements. But he is every bit the real deal. He could beat some ranked guys today, and he is someone to watch for sure.
Omar, what are your thoughts on your pick?
It didn't age well. I can tell you that. Yeah, I mean, there's not really much you can say. Chase Sherman got steamrolled. It wasn't even close, and it was a horrible pick. That's my bad.
Hey, man, it happens to all of us. All right, moving from the heavyweights down to the flyweight division, a clash of Brazilians and Francisco Figueiredo. Round one submission via knee bar against Daniel da Silva. Omar, go first.
Man. So what happened was Francisco Figueiredo watched the UFC last weekend, saw Polizzi and was like, motherfucker, hold my beer, and came out with one crazy-ass knee bar off of a scramble. Mark said last week that might be one of the quickest knee bars we've ever seen, and Figueiredo made it very difficult to figure out if that one was just as fast or even faster. So, hell of a performance from Figueiredo. He also did it off of being off of his back on the takedown. So, good on him, man. He made the most out of a bad position and came out on top looking real good.
Mark, what are your thoughts on Figgy 2 getting it done by knee bar?
Yeah, Da Silva actually looked good while it lasted. It's funny because he's 0-2 now, but he's kind of looked good in both fights, oddly enough.
Yeah, I agree.
But that was out of the damn blue. That was a hell of a finish for Figueiredo. I think he won in a way people didn't really give him much of a chance to win, and that is a big statement for his legitimacy.
I want to say real quick, there was a moment where he ends up getting caught trying to pass to side control, but he doesn't. There's a moment there where he gets stuck because he's trying to play this game where he wants to fake going one way and sneak around the back and go the other way, and instead he ends up getting caught, and then that's where the scramble happens, and he tries to roll out of it, and he ends up getting his leg caught in there. And so as good as it looked and as quick as those scrambles looked, that moment of hesitancy has me concerned for how his jiu-jitsu game is going to go going forward, because people like Figueiredo are going to take, as you can see, advantage of those moments that he gave them. So just something to point out for the future.
Cool. All right, moving up now into the welterweights. Gabriel Green scores the round 2 TKO with punches against Yoel Lainez, I believe is how you say it, Lainez. Omar, why don't you stick with this one and go first?
Boy, these boys were swinging, man. These boys were trying to take each other's heads off from moment one. Gabriel Green, I don't want to say got lucky, but kind of got lucky because he was getting dropped at points. He was getting hurt, but he found his shot. And he just kind of bum rushed through and just dropped him and just kind of poured it on him until the rev got off of him. But up until that point, man, there was a lot of moments there where you weren't sure if Green was going to survive that fight or not.
Mark, take it.
Yeah, I'm interested to see Yoel Lainez again because he looked every bit the guy with hype early on in that fight. He showed a lot of good things. But it was almost like on a dime, his cardio became an issue. And the second that he almost like paused to try to reset or catch his own breath, Gabe Green just pounced. So huge credit to Gabe Green for toughing that fight out the way he did and then seizing an opportunity. The second he saw Lainez kind of have to catch his own breathing, he was like, fuck that, we're out of here, and closed the show.
All right. Moving into the lightweight division, Natan Levy, that's right. UD over Mike Breeden. Mark, take it first.
This one was a scrap. I'm sure it's a tough loss for Mike Breeden to swallow. He really did fight well and tough, but I thought Natan Levy took the first 2 rounds, in my opinion, and he guts out a big win for himself.
All right, Omar, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I felt bad for Breeden, man. That dude's tough. He's very, very tough. The body shots and the way he poured it on in that 3rd round was super, super admirable. And if it was Pride rules, we might have a little bit of a different discussion, I guess. But yeah, credit to both of these guys though, man, because it was a hell of a scrap back and forth. Breeden apparently was 265 at one point, and now he's fighting, what was it, 155 pounds, 145 pounds, whatever it was. Monster, man. Both of them deserve a lot of credit for that fight.
All right, last one in our lightning round. In the flyweights, in the women's flyweight division, Shauna Young scored a round 2 TKO over Gina Mazzani. Omar, go first.
It was a decent fight. Young kind of came out early, or Gina came out early, was able to kind of put it on Young a little bit. Kind of had Young on her back foot for the most part. Round 2, it changed up a little bit. She was able to get the takedown, able to get a little bit of control, and then at one point just ended up pouring it on her till it was done. So it was a solid win for Young. I don't know what this says for Mazzani going forward, but Young ends up coming out victorious.
All right, Mark, take us home with your last lightning take.
Mazzani looked solid in round 1 of this fight, but man, Shauna Young settled in the 2nd round. And on the finish, she just flattened Mazzani out so quickly and easily, and Mazzani was done in that spot. Young was raining blows on her, which is exactly what you have to do in that spot and what not enough fighters do. They pause, they try to pick their spots, and it allows sometimes people to survive. It allows the ref to let it keep going. She was like, I'm just going to throw a million punches. Some may land, some may not land. I'm going to throw a million elbows, and eventually this ref is going to have to be like, all right, please stop. And that's the way you got to do it in those spots. So credit to her. Good win.
Absolutely. And that does it, folks, for this week's lightning round. Thank you, gentlemen. And now let's keep this train rolling, boys, because we have a long night, and we're going to go right into our Priaulx ranking. So if you don't know, if you're joining us for the very first time, the UFC has a rankings system of their own, and sometimes it doesn't make any sense. And this has driven our boy Mark to such confusion and frustration that he one day just started tracking his own rankings, like his personal. He's like, if I was the matchmaker, these would be how I would rank these guys. And this has become the Priaulx rankings, which we affectionately call on this show. So, Mark, why don't you let us know who has risen and fallen in your rankings system?
That was a beautiful intro, and I wish that more people moved this week because only one person rose and one person fell in any way of significance. They got Vera, big win, but he moved about 1 spot. So, the only big moves were my riser of the week was Joe Anderson Brito. He moves from number 70 to number 24 at featherweight. Ooh. Huge move. That'll happen when you're 0-1, and then you KO a guy like Andre Fili, who has the credentials that he does. So he flies up the list. And the faller, as you may be able to guess, is Andre Fili, who moves from number 19 to number 25 in my featherweight ranks. That is definitely the lowest point Andre Fili has been in my rankings in a long time. We will see if he can right the ship. And that is it for the week.
All right, sounds good. Let's keep this show rolling, boys. And let's dive inside the MMA sphere with Omar Artola, where Omar lets us know what's going on in the world of mixed martial arts outside of the cage.
Boom. All right. So, speaking of fights outside the cage, new photos of Covington's face have been released by the media.
Poor guy.
His tooth is fucked. There is a whole piece missing from his tooth.
Yeah, my man is getting a cap.
Yeah, it's not a great look.
I think he's good for it.
He also looks flushed. He's got a little red.
He got a punch in the face.
He looked like he's hot. He looks like he's tired. He looks fine. All right, let's not get crazy. But he does look stunned, like somebody done just punched him in the face. I give you that.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah. First of all, he has had the body cam footage from that night. He's had it sealed. So according to the laws down here in Florida, the person or the victim or whoever I guess is involved can request that footage not be shared with the media or anybody who requests it. So we won't be seeing any of that footage, unfortunately. It's also been pointed out that there is a restraining order against Masvidal, where he's not allowed to be within 25 feet of Covington, and he has to be at least 500 feet away from his personal residence at all times. Covington has also declared in court that he is living in fear of another attack.
Wow. Stop. Did he really?
He probably has to say that. His lawyer probably told him to say that.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, that's probably the what's the word? The statute or like the minimum for restraining order to be permitted.
I mean, I agree. It's sort of like when a guy gets into some bullshit fender bender and he shows up to the goddamn thing with the neck brace and my back. Like, listen. Whatever street cred Covington was able to falafel off of some people, I hope that shit is gone because this is ridiculous. You can use context clues. I was gonna say you can use context clues to figure out what falafel means in that term. All right, next on the list, Dan Hooker has officially called 145 a failed experiment. He put the kibosh on that. Normal 145 for Dan Hooker. He will be fighting 155, I guess, or higher in the foreseeable future. So we don't have to worry about that. Yeah, we don't have to worry about that again. Lastly, on the news spectrum here, the speculation of Zabit Magomedsharipov continues. He's posted a Instagram link or Instagram post of him potentially looking at a career in medicine. It's all still very vague and sort of up in the air. But his coach has also kind of talked about how he might be looking at a different career at this point. Ariel Helwani has kind of speculated that there might be religious implications as a reason why Magomedsharipov doesn't want to come back into fighting. There may have been some sort of religious, religious dilemma in his hands in his head in regards to MMA. And so he might be looking for something, I guess, on the other side of the spectrum. Instead of beating the shit out of people, he will be healing people. That's so nice. that might be the course of action that's going down. Nothing by any stretch of the imagination is official. It's all just a lot of speculation that I'm going to continue to speculate about.
18-1, 6-0 in the UFC. What a shame.
Right? All the potential in the world, man.
Guy basically had reached the top 5. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's get into some fight announcements, and we will hop into this weekend's MMA-filled wonder. First on the list, Andre Fialho versus Cameron VanCamp has been added to UFC 274 on May 7th. Johnny Munoz versus Tony Gravely has been added to UFC Fight Night on June 4th. Along with them, Alonzo Menefield versus Askar Mozharov has also been added. Rogerio Bontorin versus Manel Kape has been added to UFC 275 on June 11th in Singapore.
Oh, wow. How the fuck can Manel Kape fight?
What do you mean?
Because he got pulled from the card a couple weeks ago because he had elevated picograms or whatever. And apparently he had to wait 6 months while they did tests and figured out why. So much for that.
Let's double check. Let's do the double checks real
Oh,
quick.
I'm sure you're right. Maybe it was.
No, yeah.
Maybe he got clearance.
Maybe he did. Yeah, this is all recent. So yeah, I guess that one's good at least for now. We'll see what happens. If anything changes, we will definitely let you know. Going down the line, Joaquin Buckley versus Albert Duraev has been added to UFC Fight Night in Austin on June 18th. Additionally, Calvin Kattar versus Josh Emmett will be headlining that card in Austin. Kevin Holland versus Tim Means will also be on that card as well, which is straight up banger. That is 100% a scrap. Alex Pereira versus Sean Strickland has officially been moved from UFC 277 up to 276. So we actually get to see that one event sooner. We'll see that in July. Nice. Robbie Lawler versus Brian Barberina has also been added to that July 2nd card, which is International Fight Week. So they're trying to stack that whole card as much as humanly possible. Casey O'Neill is out of that July 2nd card. Jessica I will now be facing in at the last moment Macy Barber out of her recent win like a week or two ago, whatever it was now at this point.
Casey O'Neill tore her ACL, so she's going to be out for a while.
Yeah, that's probably at least the rest of the year. Yeah. Credit to Macy Barber for stepping up on short notice, but that's a big spot for her to be on, man. So I hope she makes the most of it at this point. Jessica I, though, is no slouch. I mean, she's definitely had her losses, but that's a fighter right there, too. Sean O'Malley versus Pedro Munoz is being finalized also for UFC 276 for July 2nd. This is, I believe, his first official ranked fighter, right?
Was Paiva ranked? I kind of feel like Paiva was like 15.
He was on the edge. He might have been 15 for you, but he might not have been 15 for the UFC.
I actually feel like it was the other way around. But I could be wrong.
Well, this is another good ranked fighter if it wasn't ranked before.
Put it this way. It's his first, deservedly ranked fighter.
Yes. Jessica Penne is back officially versus Brianna Fortino. That's been added to July's 16th fight night. Punahele Soriano versus Dalcha Lungiambula has been added to UFC Fight Night July 16th. Jack Hermanson versus Darren Till is officially in the works for UFC London on July 23rd. That is a big fight for Darren Till to come back on. I hope he makes the most out of that. Curtis Blades versus Tom Aspinall will be headlining that UFC Fight Night card in London on July 23rd. Magomed Ankalaev versus Anthony Smith has been added to UFC 277 on July 30th. And last but definitely not least, Cyril Gane versus Tai Tuivasa will headline UFC's September pay-per-view event on September 3rd. And that is all we have for you this week.
Sounds good. Folks, if you are with us right now, thank you so much. Find us wherever you get your podcasts if you want audio only. If you're watching this on YouTube, drop a comment below on what was one of your favorite news stories that Omar just mentioned. And, of course, join the conversation with us on social media. DM us. We get back to everybody on the DMs. We are at @new_MMA show in all the places. That being said, boys, let's look towards the future. This coming weekend, we have quite a few things to talk about. Let's first dive into the PFL, the Professional Fighters League. PFL season for 2022. This is event number 3. We don't have to dive into all these, this entire card. Let me just first shout out some of the biggest fights that are going down here. Of course, this event is going to be headlined by the women's lightweight bout between the 2019 and 2021 champion Kayla Harrison, who is one of the most dominant female fighters in the sport overall right now. She's going up against Marina Maknatkina. I'm saying her name wrong. Maknatkina. That's a mouthful. Of course, she's a former Bellator veteran. The co-main event is was supposed to be about between Ray Cooper III, the 2019 and 2021 PFL champion. He was supposed to go up against Magomed Umalatov, but Umalatov had to pull out, and he was replaced by the LFA welterweight champion Carlos Leal. Just rounding it out, other fights on the card that are pretty significant. A lightweight bout between the former UFC lightweight champion, Mr. Anthony Showtime Pettis, going up against Bellator veteran Miles Price, and Royer McDonald also making an appearance, facing off against another Bellator vet, Brett Cooper. That being said, gentlemen, any other of these fights you guys just want to shout out real quick, or fighters or things you want to mention?
Yeah, I'll go first. It's a pretty solid card name-wise. Obviously, you just mentioned you get Kayla, you get Pettis, Rory, Ray Cooper. You also have Magomed Karamov fighting Joseph Farino. You have Julia Budd in her PFL debut fighting Jenna Fabian. So there's a lot to watch here. I would be picking every single name I just said in all these fights.
Yeah.
I feel like the favorites are kind of clear, but to touch on them real quick, the Julia Budd one is important for the PFL. She is their name this season to try to create a marketable fight for Kayla Harrison. Julia Budd has still only lost 3 times in her whole career, and they are to Amanda Nunes, Ronda Rousey, and Chris Cyborg. So you can't really lose to a better 3 people than that. She has beaten everyone else that has stood in front of her. So they are certainly hoping she can deliver in her debut here and eventually stand across from Kayla in a final. So that is something to watch. Magomed Karamov, as I mentioned, will try to get his title back that Ray Cooper took from him this past season. So he'll start here. Rory McDonald, better win. Obviously, Brett Cooper has had his moments in his career for sure. But if Rory is still anything that means anything, he is going to have to beat Brett Cooper here. I do think he will. I think he'll probably win a decision. But if Rory's going to matter for the PFL, he absolutely has to win this fight. And then the same goes for Anthony Pettis in his fight. We do know now that Clay Collard and Roush Manfio are both better than anyone realized last season when they beat Pettis. So those losses don't look quite as bad. And I know Pettis is not too far separated from having quality wins in the UFC. But he's going to have to show that he's still got it here. And I think he should. Frankly, I think he can beat Miles Price in any fashion that he wants. But let's hope he can, or else we're going to have to really sound the alarms on Anthony Pettis. And then, yeah, Ray Cooper, I think, will probably take out Carlos Leal. Ray Cooper's a friggin' stud. That one's probably a finish. And then you'll have Kayla Harrison winning in the first round by anything that she wants. But, yeah, you got to go with all the favorites, I think. If you wanted to bet this thing, you can kind of line everyone up. Not Kayla, because she's minus 1 million, so it's not even worth it. But the other 5 I just mentioned, and you'll get like 3-1 odds on them all winning, and I really do think they all will. But, yeah, good card name-wise.
Yeah, man. Cool. Let's move on. Unless Omar, you got anything to say about PFL?
There's no way I can top that. I'm good.
Okay. This weekend also features Bellator 280, Bader versus Kongo 2, May 6th, going down at the Acre Hotels Arena in Paris, France. Way to go, Bellator. What a fun time for all your fighters and staff. Before we get into, I believe we're going to talk about the co-main and main event, but any other fights or fighters that you guys want to spotlight for our listeners and viewers?
I'll leave the other one for Omar because I know he likes him too. I will spotlight Soren Bach. If you don't know Soren Bach, so first of all, he's fighting Charlie Leary on this card. If you don't know him, he is 15-1. He's one of the brightest prospects in Bellator right now. He beat Paddy Pimblett for the Cage Warriors title by the scores of 48-44, 48-45, and 48-46. So you can't get clearer than that win. And he is going to beat Charlie Leary in this fight. He is a stud, and we will see how quick he rises through these Bellator ranks here.
Cool. So the guy that I'm definitely on the lookout for is Lorenz Larkin. Love me some Lorenz Larkin. Anytime, anywhere. That boy is there to fight. Definitely a dynamic striker. If he has a weakness, I guess it would be his ground game. But the kid's been around for so long, he definitely knows how to style on the ground if he needs to. But his bread and butter is definitely on his feet and his kicks. So I'm always here to see Lorenz Larkin put on a show. Sign me up.
Yeah, I don't know why he's been so inactive lately. I don't know if it was like injuries or what, but I do want to say that I heard today that this fight is at middleweight, and apparently he plans to stay at middleweight now, which is actually interesting because if he could make a run to Mousasi, that would be a pretty fun fight.
Yeah, man. Does make you think if it'll make a big difference in the way he fights. 'Cause that's an extra 15 pounds I mean, he's a fast dude. That's kind of one of his things is being fast. And so I wonder if he keeps that attribute once he goes up in weight.
He's done it in Bellator. I want to say he fought Rafael Carvalho and won at middleweight. So he's done it, but we will see.
Okay, so a bout between Yoel Romero and Melvin Manhoff was supposed to be the co-main event for Bellator 280. However, you guys may recall that Melvin Manhoff had to stop some burglars from entering his home in Amsterdam a few weeks back. He stopped the burglars, but apparently he sustained some kind of injury or injuries from the encounter and pulled out of this fight and was replaced by Alex Polizzi. So, Mark, why don't you go first and preview for us Yoel versus Polizzi?
I did not realize that's why Manhoff is out. That's wild. Yeah. All right, odds-wise here, you got Yoel as the favorite at -165. Alex Polizzi comes back at +135, so fairly close.
That's very close.
Short notice fight for Polizzi, as Mike mentioned. He may honestly be the tougher test than Manhoff, though, at this point in Manhoff's career. He's 4-1 in Bellator. His only loss is to Julius Angliscus. That's his only loss in his whole career, mind you. He's 10-1. He just looked very good in his last fight. He's 30 years old, so 15 years Yoel Romero's junior, whereas at least Manhoff was a fellow old man. Yoel, who I love, who I will always love, is so hard to evaluate. If he's going to continue mattering, first of all, he needs to win this fight. I still don't think he should be fighting at 205. I would love for him to go down to 185 in Bellator. But Polizzi is not a long or big light heavyweight, which helps. They're actually just about the same size. So I don't want to go into some huge analysis because it's Yoel Romero and who even knows what he's going to do when the cage door shuts. But hopefully someone tells him how many rounds are in the fight, and hopefully he remembers that he's allowed to throw punches or use takedowns. And I'm just going to hope that the idea of there's levels to this still applies and that Yoel Romero has not sunk to a level where he is going to lose to Alex Polizzi. So I will take Yoel Romero by unanimous decision, and I don't know what I'm going to do if he loses this fight.
Omar, give us your take of Romero versus Polizzi.
So I don't trust Romero to actually know how to win a decision. I feel like Romero's going to end up being in this fight doing this.
Yeah.
For the crossing guard, right? The air traffic controller for 3 rounds. And then by the end of the fight, he's going to be like, "Hey, what happened? Why you no fight me? He no fight me. He no come forward. He no fight me." So that's kind of what I expect. So I'm going to go with Polizzi by decision.
Okay. I like that. So we got Polizzi by decision. Mark, what was your pick again ultimately?
Romero decision.
You went Romero by decision. Fuck it. I'll go Polizzi by decision with Omar.
You guys are terrible people. Terrible people.
Okay, so after Mr. Ryan Bader defended his Bellator heavyweight title against Moldavsky, he is making a quick return to the Bellator circle, facing Cheick Kongo in a rematch from their 2019 fight at Bellator 226. If you recall, that bout ended due to an accidental eye poke to Kongo's left eye in the very first round, resulting in a no contest. And we're back with Bader and Kongo, hopefully getting the fight that we should have gotten the first time. Omar, why don't you give us your take on this upcoming fight and ultimately your pick?
So while you guys know I'm not the biggest Bader fan, I will acknowledge that I frankly feel like Bader is the better fighter amongst the two. I think he's just a lot more well-rounded, especially now. His hands have definitely gotten better. I don't think they're the best hands in the world, but they've definitely gotten better than what he had before. He's a lot more effective, a lot more explosive, and he's a lot more accurate with his strikes at this point. And Kongo has shown a vulnerability with his chin in the past. He has shown the ability to weather storms as well. Let's not give credit where credit is due, right? He definitely takes he has taken a lot of shots, and while his legs always they've failed him in the past, they have quickly backed him up as well in a lot of situations. So while it's difficult to say Kongo will be put out completely, I will say Bader will win at the very minimum by TKO.
Mark?
Second round.
I now fully understand why Cheick Kongo got this title shot before Fedor did. I did not realize until I started thinking about this card that this was happening in Paris and that Bellator had this Paris event on their schedule. So what better way to headline a Paris event than with Cheick Kongo fighting for the heavyweight title? So that all makes sense now. Hopefully if Bader wins, we're still going to get him and Fedor. But, yeah, we already have the narrative and the bad blood built into this rematch. Mike mentioned the eye poke a few years back. Bader at the time said his hand was on the nose and that Cheick already wanted out because he realized, how easily he could be taken down and that Bader was controlling him. Cheick was livid at that. He demanded that Bader admit it and apologize. So there's some heat there. They've definitely exchanged some words since. So this is a rematch that needed to happen, especially since we didn't even get a winner the first time. The fight had barely started. So unfortunately for Kongo and for the fans in Paris, I agree with Omar. I think this is mostly one-way traffic. I have been impressed with Kongo and Bellator. I really have. But I just don't think he can stop Ryan Bader's game. And I don't trust his cardio in the type of fight that Ryan Bader is going to put on him. His chance is probably to catch Bader early, and obviously Bader can be caught. Plus Kongo will have like those magic MMA vibes of trying to win a title in his home country. But I've said it on here before, I trust Bader's chin way more at heavyweight, and I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's either a clear UD for Bader or a TKO where Kongo is just tiring and Bader gets him out of there. So I'm going to go with that route. I'll say Ryan Bader, a lot of wrestling, tiring Kongo out. By round 3, TKO, Ryan Bader ends still.
I agree with both of you, and I will go Ryan Bader round 4, TKO, maybe a rear naked or something like that. I'll say Cheick Kongo looks like he should never lose a fight. Maybe one of the most impressive physiques MMA has ever seen. The guy looks like a damn action figure. But that being said, yeah, I agree. I think Ryan Bader's skill set is going to win out here, and I think he's going to just slowly overwhelm Cheick Kongo. And Cheick Kongo is going to tire with all that muscle he carries around. And in round 4, I think we're going to see Ryan Bader find top position and probably pound him out for victory. And still,
Bader is a pretty big favorite as well, which I forgot to mention. He's minus 400. Kongo's plus 310 the other way. So the bookies see it similar to us.
And big shout out to Bellator. Quarter 1 and quarter 2 hitting us with double Hawaii and a Paris event. I mean,
it's valid.
Shout out to Bellator. That's big work right there.
Globe trotting. It's like, and they like set us up to be surprised because they're always just like, Mohegan Sun, Mohegan Sun, Mohegan Sun, Mohegan Sun. And then they're like, boom, Hawaii, boom, Paris.
They got London soon too, right? Or somewhere in the UK where the MVP card where he was supposed to be fighting Amosov for the belt.
Good for them.
Now he's fighting Storley, right?
It's just also noted that the UFC is working on all of these things or whatever, but UFC is going to be second now in that race, right? Like UFC might put on a better show. That's totally possible. But at the end of the day, Bellator put their flag there first, man. They were in Hawaii first, and they were in Paris first. And it's a big deal. So good on them. Good for Coker.
Yeah, man. All right, gentlemen, let us now hop into this coming weekend's UFC pay-per-view, UFC 274. All right. I believe we're touching on all of these fights. Of course, 274 is Oliveira versus Gaethje. Oh, my God. Perhaps, especially for MMA purists like ourselves, one of the most hotly anticipated bouts of the year. Let us start at the bottom of the card and work our way up for previews as we are accustomed to doing now. For these first few bouts, let's make some quick picks. All right, so starting us out in the bantamweight division, Journey Newson versus Fernie Garcia. Mark, why don't you take this one first?
Good scrap here. Could go either way. I have not been terribly impressed with Newson's UFC run. So give me Garcia. He looked good on Contender Series. I will say he wins a decision.
Omar, take it.
Yeah, I would actually have to agree. I'm going to go with Garcia by a finish. I'm going to go with KO round 1.
Okay. I like Garcia as well. I'm going to go knockout in round 1 as well. Okay, in the women's strawweight division, Lupita Godinez against Ariane Carnelossi. Omar, go first.
So Lupi's got a little bit of a name behind her, but I got to say the Soriso, she's got a bit of a run going on right now, and I like the way that she's actually been performing. She's had a loss to Angela Hill, but I think I'm going to go with Carnelossi by second round submission.
Mark, take it.
Yeah, Carnelossi could absolutely win this. She is very physically strong, which could end up being a factor. But I like Godinez. She's looked really good in her fights at 115. Her only loss was when she tried to move up. This is at 115. I think she continues to look good here. I will take her to win a decision.
I like it. I agree. All right, in the flyweight division, Kleydson Rodriguez versus CJ Vergara. Mark, why don't you go first?
There is some hype on Kleydson Rodriguez coming in. He is a talented striker. I will go with him to win this one on points.
Okay. Omar, what's your take?
I will go with Rodriguez by third round KO.
Okay. I'll go with that as well. All right, moving up into the women's flyweight division, Tracy Cortez, girlfriend of Brian T. City Ortega. Are they engaged or married at this point?
I want to say they might be engaged.
I feel like they're also engaged.
Yeah, good for him. Good for them, but good for him. Tracy Cortez taking on Melissa Gatto. Omar, go first.
Yeah, I'm actually a big fan of Tracy Cortez. I think she actually has really decent striking. She's got good takedown defense, and she's got heart, man. If nothing else, she's definitely a fighter for sure. Gatto's also a very scrappy person. She definitely comes to fight. She's got a few finishes in her career. But I think I'm going to go with Tracy Cortez, but I think this is going to be a hard-fought fight. I'm going to go with decision for her.
I like it. Mark, take it.
So, yeah, we're getting into some more credentialed people here now. I'll start giving the odds. Cortez is a slight favorite, minus 160. Gatto is the dog at plus 130. I'm still not sold on exactly how good Tracy Cortez is, which may not make sense because her resume is good. She has wins over Maria Agapova, over Erin Blanchfield, Justine Kish, Stephanie Egger. So I should probably be more sold than I am. But a couple of those were like debatable split decisions. And I don't know, I haven't been wowed. And Gatto is very physical. She's bigger. She impressed me in her last fight because I do rate Sarge Eubanks. I think Gatto is probably the better striker. And I think even if Cortez wrestles, which obviously she's going to look to do, I think Gatto can scramble and has a jits game to concern Cortez as well. So I'm going to go with Gatto to win this one. I could see her catch Cortez in a sub, but I think I will say decision for Gatto.
Man, if Tracy Cortez has been dating Brian Ortega as long as she has and doesn't have a jits game at this point, the hell have you been doing? What have you been doing?
It's a good point. Glad I said decision.
That's a great point. I'm going to go Tracy Cortez by unanimous decision in this one. All right, moving up to the welterweight division, Andre Fialho versus Cameron VanCamp. Mark, why don't you take this one first?
Fialho is minus 400 here. VanCamp is plus 300. He's making his debut. He is more so a lightweight than a welterweight. Granted, he does fight at both, so he's up at welterweight here. He was scheduled originally to debut in the UFC at lightweight. I forget against who, and it got canceled, so now he's debuting at welterweight. But it's hard to not pick Andre Fialho right now. He looks great. I think he can get a finish here. I don't think VanCamp will have the power to knock Fialho off his game, and I think Fialho picks him apart. I will say second round TKO.
All right. Omar, tell us what's what.
Yeah, this guy just murdered Miguel Baeza, so I kind of feel like I should probably go with Andre Fialho. I think he's obviously got a lot of power in his hands, and Baeza was putting it on him up until that point too, so he's definitely able to weather some shots if he needs to and kind of come out on top, find that shot that'll put somebody away. So I'm going to go with Fialho. I'm going to go with TKO round 2.
Oh, that was my pick. God damn it. I'm going Fialho round 2, TKO or knockout.
I said round 2 also. We also had the same
bingo.
thing.
Yeah, we're unanimous. Okay, here we go. These bouts that we're about to hop into are getting a little more consequential, so let's allow ourselves to have a little bit of elongated quick picks. All right, in the welterweight division, staying in the welterweight division, that is Francisco Trinaldo versus Danny Roberts. Mark, take it.
So this is a dead pick'em. Both guys are minus 110. Danny Roberts is always impossible for me to evaluate. He is 7-4 in the UFC, but he's always been a guy who seems to falter whenever he gets a step up, and Francisco Trinaldo is definitely that. And Roberts is also a guy who tends to win if he's not fighting a finisher. And if he is, then he generally looks good until he gets finished. So the question for me is simply, do I think Francisco Trinaldo at 43 years old, almost 44 years old, is still a dangerous enough finisher to take out Danny Roberts? And as good as Trinaldo has been in the UFC, that was all at lightweight. Roberts is going to have a 5-inch height and 4-inch reach advantage on him here. So I'm kind of thinking that he can avoid the finish. I never really expected to be picking Danny Roberts because he's not a guy that I love. But, if he does get dropped or even tapped, it would not shock me at all. I just feel like the guy finds ways to be finished. But I kind of feel like this is the right type of matchup where he could just stay safe and take a competitive decision, be the longer fighter, win on points. So I will say he does that with a little bit of an face about it. But Roberts 29-28. Maybe even a split.
Omar, take it.
Yeah, I personally think this is probably going to be one of the more lackluster fights of the entire night, to be honest. I see Danny Roberts using a lot of movements to try to stay away from Trinaldo, trying to work on the outside, trying to use his points to his advantage. And we've seen Trinaldo have a lot of issues with people who are rangy. He doesn't like to play that game a lot, and he gets very frustrated, and he lets the frustration get the best of him. And by the time you realize that the round's over, and he's just been pieced up, but nothing's really actually happened. So I don't see this being the most exciting fight, unfortunately. I'm always down to be proven wrong, but I do see Danny Roberts winning a decision, a unanimous one at that.
I'm going Trinaldo by unanimous decision. All right, moving up into the heavyweight division, Blagoy, Ivanov, versus Marcos Rogerio de Lima. Omar, why don't you stay here and go first?
Bro, Blagoy Ivanov looks like he's like 45. This man is 35 years old.
Yeah. Getting stabbed in the heart will age you a few years.
Fucking hell, that's got to be a story. All right, so Ivanov versus Marcos Rogerio Pessoa. Let's see. I really like Marcos Rogerio de Lima. I like the way he fights. I actually like his style very much. I think he's very, very dangerous on his feet, but he's also, I think, equally as dangerous on the ground when he gets the ability to get there. He has had faults on the ground before, but I think at this point it was to Alexander Romanov, who we know apparently is a monster, Stefan Struve, who has arms like a goddamn albatross, so I mean, that's going to happen. But like I said, his bread and butter seems to definitely be more the feet. So I'm going to go with Rogerio de Lima by knockout. Third round.
Mark, go ahead.
I was waiting for you. Yep. De Lima is a small dog here, plus 125. Ivanov is minus 150. De Lima has actually looked good at heavyweight, and he's gotten huge. It's hard to imagine that he used to be a 205-pounder. But Blagoy is really good. He's only 2-3 in the UFC, but all 3 losses were really close, and they were to Junior Dos Santos, Derek Lewis, and Augusto Sakai. So if you're giving close fights to guys like that, I kind of think you're going to be a level above De Lima. Ivanov is really hard to hurt. De Lima is someone who kind of relies on the finish. He doesn't really win decisions too often. So I think Ivanov will just be hard to hurt, rely on that veteran savvy, kind of mix it up if needed. And I think he frustrates De Lima actually a lot in this fight and gets it done, wins a clear decision.
Nice. I did not realize, or maybe I forgot that De Lima's nickname is also Bigfoot. I think that should not be allowed. There already is a Brazilian heavyweight named Bigfoot. Not allowed.
No, sir, too late. It's been used. Think of a new one.
I'm going to go Ivanov by knockout. Let's fucking say round 1. Let's go for it.
baby.
All right, moving down into the fly. Excuse me.
My pick is very very out there. Ivanov has never been knocked out in his career, so
I didn't realize
this will be a thing if it happens.
Nice. All right, moving down into the flyweights, Brandon Raw Dog Royval versus Matt Schnell. A fun fight at flyweight. Mark, go first.
So Royval's a pretty good favorite here. He's minus 250. Schnell is plus 200 the other way. Schnell is a really solid all-around fighter, but I don't think he can threaten Brandon Royval enough to beat him. I don't think there's enough for Royval to be concerned about, and if that's the case, he can just freely be the friggin' Tasmanian devil that he is, and I think Schnell will be in trouble. I don't trust him to stay safe in that wildness and in the pressure that Royval brings. I don't think he can make Royval back off, and I think it might be a tough night for him. I think Royval can get him out of there. Maybe I see like a club and sub. Could also just be a straight sub, but I kind of like the club and sub. But either way, I will say Schnell is tapping in round 2.
Omar, what's your take?
Yeah, I actually think that's also my pick as well. I mean, I love the way Royval's crazy game works. We always talk about having him just sort of tighten things up a little bit when necessary, and I think we saw that. We saw a lot of adjustments in his last fight with Bonserine. So I'm hopeful that mind, that process, that fighter IQ is going to continue. So I'm going to give Royval the win, second round submission as well.
I'm rolling with my boy, Brandon Royval. I'm going to say round 1, submission by Brandon Royval, because for those flyweights, man, 5 minutes feels like an eternity because those guys fight so fast. They do so much fighting within the time of a round. Like one round for flyweights feels like 2 rounds. So I'm going to say towards the end of round 1, I think he's going to hurt Matt Schnell and jump right on him, and we're going to get probably like a rear naked victory for Brandon Royval. All right, moving up to the women's featherweight division, Macy Chazon versus Norma Dumont. Mark, why don't you take this one first?
So Chasson, as you said, moving up here, she is the dog, plus 190. Dumont is a pretty good favorite at minus 225. Macy Chasson is obviously jumping up here to try to get a win and suddenly be in the title mix by fighting at 145 instead of 135, so I can't hate on the move. She is way bigger, which is interesting. She is 4 inches taller and has a 5-inch reach advantage. Granted, she doesn't necessarily use her reach when she fights, so maybe it's not as big of a factor. But it's still, the fact that the 135er is that much bigger is pretty interesting. Dumont does look solid everywhere, both offensively and defensively. She really nullified Aspen Ladd in her last fight. Granted, some of that was probably on Ladd as well. But Dumont is not an easy fight. I'm torn. I kind of see a possibility where Chasson looks great, and we're all like, wow, Macy Chasson should have always been a featherweight. But I think Dumont has a better understanding of how to win fights. I kind of think Chasson is lacking in that IQ area sometimes. So I will go with Dumont to dictate a somewhat boring fight and win a decision.
Omar?
I would like to believe that with Chasson having a size advantage, that she would actually use it to her advantage. I would like to think that her coaches are going to set her up for success in that respect, because I think without her having to cut as much weight, she's definitely going to carry a lot more power into this weight division, and especially if she's going to be the bigger person, she's basically got 2 advantages right there where a lot of people might only have 1 moving up a division. So I'm optimistic that Chasson will have a good performance, so I'm hoping she goes with a unanimous decision.
Okay. I agree. I think Chazon is going to go winner by UD. All right, boys. For the rest of these fights, I think let's go over a little fuller breakdown here. In the welterweight division, we have Randy Brown taking on Chaos Williams. What a name, man. Man, imagine popping out the baby at that hospital. Be like, you know what I'm going to name my son?
Real name, dude. It's not his real
Chaos. Name. It's not?
No, his name's Kalen.
Oh, God damn it. I thought it was.
But he's one of those guys that never uses his actual name, so I don't blame you.
Man, acting like a Brazilian out here, man.
He's Kalen Chaos Williams.
It's Chaos the Ox Fighter is technically his full nickname.
What a nickname, the Ox Fighter. All right, so Randy Brown.
What does it even mean?
Randy Brown coming off back-to-back wins. Most recently, a unanimous decision against Jared Gooden back in October of 2021. Chaos Williams also coming off 2 wins. Most recently, TKOing Miguel Baeza back in November. So, Mark, why don't you lead us off here and break down Randy Brown taking on Kalen Chaos, the Oxblood Fighter Williams.
So I love this fight. It's basically a pick'em. Randy Brown is technically the dog. He's plus 100. Chaos Williams, slight favorite, minus 120. This fight is violence. I fully expect someone to get hurt in this fight. I'm really torn because Randy Brown is the better fighter. Like, if we're checking boxes, it's Randy Brown in almost every single box other than power. But, God, I think we can all see Chaos Williams just flatlining him because that's what Chaos Williams does to people. Brown has been KO'd before by Vicente Luque and even from Nico Price with hammer fist from his back, if you remember, which was crazy. So his chin can certainly be cracked. Chaos has more or less murdered people in his UFC tenure. The only person who got the better of him was Michel Pereira, who was a huge welterweight. But Brown is pretty big himself. Brown is 3 inches taller than Chaos. He has a 1-inch reach advantage on him. Usually the reach is in Chaos's favor. He's very long. So that's something to think about. A little harder for Chaos to get to the chin of Randy Brown. I don't know. Put it this way. Randy Brown is either going to be winning this fight and keep winning it, or he's going to be winning this fight and then get put to sleep. I do think he is the better fighter. But I think I got to go with him because I can't shake the vision of how mature Randy Brown looked in his last fight. He was so poised. He was so comfortable. He's fast. He really looks like he's coming into his own. So I think that's enough to make me believe I am going to go with Randy Brown by UD in a fight where both guys get hurt at times, but he will be walking a tightrope the whole fight.
Omar, tell us what's what.
I'm a Randy Brown fan. I don't pick against Randy Brown for better or worse. I love the way Randy Brown fights. I've been a big fan of his technique from jump, and I think in his last fight, just like Mark was saying, if you didn't notice it, if you go back and you watch it, his use of kicks in that fight is so phenomenal. His ability to change levels with his kicks, create distance with his kicks. Somebody that size with the length that he has with his legs should be making the most out of the length of those legs. And he really was. And so I expect him to kind of bring the same sort of technique to this fight as well. And it's really hard to punch somebody in the face when you're getting kicks thrown to your head. So I hope that Randy Brown has a good, solid game plan. It's not a wonder what Chaos Williams is trying to do in that fight. He's not trying to win by points. He is trying to go out there and he's trying to rip your head off. So I hope their game plan works around that. I hope that the game plan isn't to wait for Chaos Williams to try to take his head off, though. I hope we're not going to be playing the waiting game. I hope that Randy Brown comes forward, pushes the pressure, and then adjusts when Chaos Williams starts to try to land blows on him. But if we end up playing the waiting game, this is going to be it's not going to go the way I think Randy Brown thinks it's going to go. But I'm optimistic. I think Randy Brown knows how to get this done. I will go with Randy Brown by unanimous decision.
I'm sticking with my man, Chaos, who I know so well that I know his first name. I'm going to go Chaos Williams by TKO or knockout in round number 2.
Oof.
Damn.
Yeah, I love the way the guy fights. He's must-see TV.
Oh, he's like a throwback fighter.
Yeah, he kind of is. You're right. All right, moving on to the people's fight of the night. Man, 2 legends throwing down in the lightweight division. We have Donald Cowboy Cerrone taking on Joe Lozon. Neither one really needing an introduction. But what the heck, Donald Cerrone, of course, the legend of legends, really, guys. He is the 39-year-old Coloradan. He is fighting now for his son, Danger. I believe his son's name is Danger.
It is indeed.
He's got 2 sons now, I want to say.
What's that?
I think he has 2 sons now, I want to say.
Oh, does he?
I kind of think so. I could be wrong, but I think
him.
so.
Good for him, man. Good for him. He got all choked up at the press conference talking about how his son's going to see him when he walks out, and he's gonna know what Daddy does for a living now, and how cool that he thinks that's going to be, and good for him, man, good for him. But that being said, as much of a legend as Cowboy Cerrone is, he has a lot of red on his record as of late, the past few years. He has not tasted victory since defeating Ally Quinta back in May of 2019, and he has lost 5 of his last 6, most recently getting TKO'd by Alex Morono back in May of 2021. So he's definitely looking to get back in the win column in lightweight. And we have Joe Lauzon, another legend, the Massachusetts native, really needing no introduction. Of course, he's been a lightweight fighter in the UFC for as long as I can remember. He's a fan favorite because he always brings it, and he always comes to fight. He's coming off a win, a TKO victory against Jonathan Pierce back in October of 2019, so a bit of a layoff for Joe Lauzon. And guys, this is going to be a great scrap. I'm glad these two guys are facing off. Mark, let me start with you. What's your take and what's your pick ultimately of Donald Cerrone taking on Joe Lauzon?
So yeah, Cowboy does have 2 sons. The other one is named Riot. So Danger and Riot.
Ryan, okay.
But oops, what I just click? Yikes! Good
Wait,
thing
did you
I
say
didn't
Ryan or Riot?
No, Riot.
Like we need to stop the riot.
Yes.
It gets nicer though. It's Riot River.
Oh.
So that's softer.
Is Danger the first name of his first son, or is it the middle name?
It's the middle. It's Daxon
That's what I thought.
Danger.
What is it?
Daxon. Dacson.
Jackson Danger. Right.
Wow. Okay, back to the fight. Cerrone is the favorite here. He's minus 180. Joe Lauzon is plus 150, so fairly close. It's kind of nuts that we're getting this fight. I honestly love it. It's 2 guys who feel like they should have crossed paths before and never have. Joe Lauzon, as Mike said, hasn't fought in almost 3 years. He did win his last fight, but he had lost 3 straight before that. Cowboy hasn't fought in a year and hasn't won a fight since 2019, which is hard to even imagine with someone like a resume like his. To be honest, what we have here is 2 legends, one more legendary than the other, to be fair, whose best days have passed them by. But I'm still very excited to see them throw down. It's a little scary for Cerrone because lately he doesn't react well to pressure, and not only will Lauzon pressure you, but if he sees you not reacting well, he smells blood like no one else. But I have to still pick Cerrone here simply because in these guys' primes, Cerrone would have beaten Lauzon every single time, in my opinion. And I get it that these are not their primes, but I just can't convince myself that Cerrone is not going to beat Joe Lauzon. Lauzon won't have an advantage on the mat, how he's accustomed to with most opponents, because Cerrone is just as nasty there. I hope that Cerrone is still the more dangerous striker. Plus, he is still very much training MMA, whereas Joe was kind of like out of the MMA world and is jumping back in for a fight for a chance to fight Cowboy. So I'm going to go with Cowboy, and fuck it. I'm going to say we get a vintage Cowboy moment. Big head kick. Lauzon drops. Cerrone either jumps on him with punches or with a choke or something and gets him out of there in round 2.
Nice. All right, Omar, give us your take.
You know, as I watch these thumbnails of Joe Lauzon and Cerrone, all that keeps going in my head is that moment in Jumanji when he comes out and he's like, "What year is it?" It's all that keeps running in my head right now because this fight should have happened like 10 years ago at this point, if not longer. So, I'm honestly less interested in this fight now than I would have been 10 years ago, but here we are. I do think Cerrone is still the better fighter. I don't know where the fall-offs are, though, for both of these guys, right? Like, Cerrone's not the same guy that he was in the past. He's got miles to him at this point. But Joe Lauzon also, how much has he improved in the recent years? I would think not as much at this point. His fight game is his fight game, and I don't think he's radically changed. And his major weapons have frankly been his right hand and his ground game. And I just don't think that he's going to be able to implement that game against Cerrone the way he would have been successful back in the day against guys who just weren't nearly as skilled. But nowadays, I don't think his game works for a multitude of people. So I'm going to go with Donald Cerrone, and I'm going to go also with a finish. I'm going to go round 1 KO.
Man, I kind of want to be the contrarian and go Joe Lozon, but I'm not going to go against Dad ×2 Donald Cerrone. And I'm going to agree with Mark. I'm going to say we're going to get a vintage Cerrone performance. Let's go fast switch kick. He catches Joe Lozon, and he jumps on him, and he finishes him. Let's go round 2. I feel like every fucking pick I made tonight has been round 2.
It's exactly the same pick I had, yeah.
Yeah.
We're on the same page. I will
Bingo.
say this. If Cowboy loses to Joe, that's got to be it.
Well, so Dana White has said kind of on the record that, when we're getting to these, but Michael Chandler and Tony Ferguson is not a do or die fight like a lot of people seem to be having insinuated over the last few weeks. However, Joe Lozon, I don't know why. The point is it's not. Joe Lozon versus Donald Cerrone, however, is a do or die fight. Apparently, it's loser kind of leaves at this point, so it's a big deal.
I mean, my man Donald Cowboy Cerrone, he has 1 pro boxing fight, 29 kickboxing fights, and 54, making his 55th walk in MMA this Saturday night. God, this guy's got a lot of miles on his body.
With a chance to move back into the lead for most UFC wins, if he can win.
Wow.
He's a legend.
All
dude.
right. Yeah, man. Sure. Fucking legend. Fucking put him in the Hall of Fame immediately when he retires.
Yeah. Yes.
Let's move on.
Speaking of legends.
What's that?
Speaking of legends.
Speaking of legends, in the light heavyweight division, we're getting treated to a Mauricio Shogun Rua sighting, taking on Ovens St. Preux. Rua, the 40-year-old Brazilian fighting out of Curitiba, he has been an MMA legend as long as some MMA fighters have careers. He's fought in the UFC for many years, fought in Pride. Mainly Pride is where he really kind of became known. And he is coming off of a loss, of course, to the Scotsman Paul Craig, losing by TKO back in November of 2020. So he's returning right now. And then we have OSP, who I think is going to be a kind of a tall order for Shogun, but we're going to get into that. Coming off of back-to-back losses, both knockout losses against Jamal Hill and Tanner Boser. But still, a record nothing to scoff at, 25-16 as a pro. Always a dangerous guy at light heavyweight. Omar, let me throw it over to you first. What is your take and ultimately your pick of Shogun Rua taking on OSP?
I did not realize that their records are almost virtually identical at this point. Oven St. Preux is 25-16.
Virtually identical.
and Shogun is 27-12-1. So
and OSP is also 39 years old. He's been around.
Wow, really? Fuck.
Yeah. They're not very far off from one another, and I don't think I ever really realized that. Shogun is 40, OSP is 39, man. They're right there.
I can't believe he's 39.
It seemed like OSP was just younger and, I guess had the better record or something like that, but not really. It doesn't really seem that way. What I will say is Oven St. Preux, I think, is one of these guys that hits very hard in that division. He has a lot of different tools that he uses on the stand-up. The thing I'm concerned about specifically for Rua is always, at this point and forever, going to be his chin. We know that Shogun can crack. We know that he knows how to throw a punch and land stuff. We know that he's not going to step back for a majority of that fight. The man comes forward. We know that if you deform his face, he's still going to fight you. So there's not a lot that's going to deter Shogun Rua from coming at St. Preux. And St. Preux doesn't do very well with pressure. He does back up, and he does end up getting gas as a result of it. And so that is my one big worry for St. Preux throughout this fight. Everything on paper, in my opinion, though, says that St. Preux should win this fight. He's got the reach advantage. He should have the size advantage. He should have a power advantage as well. But Shogun is Shogun, man. And on his worst day, he always has a puncher's chance of putting somebody's lights out. So
Sure.
With that in mind, I still will be going St. Preux. I'll go St. Preux by decision.
Okay, Mark, give us your take.
So St. Preux is the favorite here, minus 250. Shogun is plus 200. Yeah, so we go from a couple legends to maybe an even bigger legend in Shogun. This one is a rematch for anyone who may have forgotten. The first one lasted all of 34 seconds before OSP KO'd Shogun. I would expect we're going to get to see this one play out a little longer this time. OSP, with all his warts, is still a skilled fighter and is generally winning when he's not getting KO'd. And I'm just not sure Shogun is still the necessary type of KO threat at this point in his career to deter OSP. I think OSP could look to take him down here, lean on his size, lean on his wrestling, maybe even try to find a sub. Granted, Shogun is always really underrated on the ground, as he showed in his first fight with Paul Craig, where he hung with him down there for a while in the draw. Let me be clear. OSP should win this fight. It's hard to pick Shogun, but guess what I'm going to do? Because this is my show, and I can do what I want. And I want to watch a card where Cowboy and Shogun win back-to-back fights.
Let's go.
I'm going to pick Shogun Hua, round 2 knockout, big hook on a combo, OSP drops, pride, never die, let's go.
I'm going to disagree with you, and I'm going to say that Shogun Hua at this point, even though these guys are pretty close in age and pretty close in records, with the smaller frame that he has, I think he's going to have just too many miles, too many fights, too much damage on him. And OSP being the bigger guy, I think his size differential and power difference is just going to make the difference. And I think he's going to land and hurt Shogun, and I'm going to say he's going to get him out of there. Let's go round 3 TKO. All right, gentlemen. Moving.
Time to buckle up.
Yeah, man. Here we go. Lightweight division, we have Michael Chandler taking on El Kukui. Tony Ferguson. Michael Chandler, the more recent entrant into the UFC, the 36-year-old, born in Missouri, resides in Tennessee, fighting out of Boca Raton, Florida. So he is America through and through, touching all the corners of the U.S. He is 1-3 in the UFC, though. He won his debut against Dan Hooker in a very impressive fashion, then lost a very close back-and-forth title fight against Charles do Bronx Oliveira, and then lost a barn burner against Justin Gaethje. So even in back-to-back losses, I don't think Michael Chandler's stock has been hurt that much. And then you have Tony Ferguson, who himself is somewhat of a legend himself, and especially in the lightweight division. He is 38 years old. He is from Oxnard, California, fighting out of Orange County. Things have not been going great for him. As of late, he's dropped 3 in a row against Justin Gaethje, Oliveira, and Beneil Dariush. So all of his losses recently have come against the very best in the lightweight division. Mark, let me start with you here. Great fight. Very hotly anticipated fight between Chandler and Ferguson. What's your take? And ultimately give us your pick.
This fight. Chandler's a big favorite. He's minus 400. Tony is plus 300.
Wow.
It feels very strange to me that people are looking past Tony Ferguson. It really does. But at the same time, I'm kind of one of these people. Like, it kind of just feels like Tony's time has very suddenly passed. And, like, because it feels so sudden, there's a part of my brain that wants to tell me I'm nuts and that Tony Ferguson is going to win by butchering like he used to. But the way he has looked lately has been concerning. Like, it's been 3 fights in a row where he can't even get his game going. And he just looks old suddenly. He even visually looks old. I don't know if you guys have seen, like, the countdown or the embeddeds for this fight. Like, he looks old all of a sudden. I don't think this matchup is any easier than his last ones. You know, Michael Chandler is relentless. He's a dog. He can wrestle. He can scramble. He has big power. And most important of all that is he's so fast. And I think that speed is going to be a major problem for Tony. Like, Tony has looked slow in his last few fights against guys who are not close to as fast as Michael Chandler. So while I respect Tony so much, and I kind of can't believe we're here this quickly, as I said, and I'm so tempted to be like, oh, man, I got to bet on Tony at plus 300 odds. Like, what in the hell is Tony Ferguson plus 300? But I can't really find a reasoning for why he would beat Michael Chandler. It feels like it would have to be a finish if he did it. I guess maybe I could see Chandler winning the first 2 rounds and Tony rallying late in the third and maybe hurting Chandler. But, I think that's getting a little crazy. I think Chandler fights a lot more controlled in this fight. He said it a lot of times that he totally ignored the game plan against Gaethje, and he can't let himself do that again because it is about winning, and he kind of forgot it in that fight. I think everything favors Chandler. I think he knows he needs his win. I don't think he messes around. I will say Michael Chandler, UD.
Okay, Omar, give us your take and your pick.
I'd have to agree because Ferguson losing doesn't really concern me because Ferguson lost to the top of the top, the cream of the crop, right? It's Gaethje, it's Oliveira, and Dariush is right there, man. Not many people at this point are touching Dariush right now, so I'm not concerned with who he lost to. I am massively concerned with how he lost.
Yep.
Justin Gaethje, if this wasn't a fight inside of a cage, Justin Gaethje would still be in prison for what he did to Tony Ferguson that night. That was like 8 ass beatings in one fight.
That was tough to watch.
It was very tough to watch. Broke his whole face. And that was probably the most damage that Tony Ferguson has ever had in his career. Probably the most damage he's had added up throughout his whole career in one fight. It was terrifying to watch him take all that damage. So that's number one. Charles Oliveira suns him from beginning to end with no debate. And then Dariush also suns him from beginning to end. So I don't have as much confidence in Tony Ferguson to get things done anymore. There is a sluggishness about him at this point where he used to have this explosiveness, his ability to, those Imanari rolls, you can see them coming from a mile away at this point. You know what I mean? The spinning back elbows don't have the same sort of surprise that I feel like they once used to. Michael Chandler is a goddamn specimen. That man has been an athlete and has kept his body in athletic shape since he was like 2. I mean, he talks about wrestling all the time, how this is basically how he's grown up. And we see a lot of fighters who like to jump in weight and I'm not fighting right now, so I'm going to balloon up to this. Michael Chandler doesn't play that shit. Michael Chandler might gain a little weight here and there, whatever, but we're not talking like he's not Patty Pimblett-ing his life, right? You're not going to see a 210-pound Michael Chandler after this fight is done. And so Michael Chandler physically is a real big problem for Tony because that athleticism is going to play a role in that fight. And Tony Ferguson is super liable to get his ass real hurt in this fight. So I hope we have a good referee for this fight. I hope we're not giving Tony Ferguson the benefit of the doubt because of how tough Tony Ferguson is. I think we saw from the Gaethje fight that fight could have been stopped a lot sooner than it was, and I don't think anybody would have been that upset about it. So hopefully we have some good refereeing going on in this fight. I do think Michael Chandler is going to beat the brakes off of Tony Ferguson. I am going to go with a KO by round 2.
Yeah, I've said it before on this show that the flip side of unorthodox is sloppy. And that's how Tony has looked in his past 3 fights. I mean, I do think that Justin Gaethje took something from Tony Ferguson.
Yes.
That he will not be getting back. And, he looked wild and kind of, messy against Beneil, against Charles, and he got kind of taken apart by those guys. Yeah, I would love to see Tony return to form. Tony Ferguson has never been a guy at lightweight to have devastating power. I would say at his peak, at his prime, he had good stinging power, but not like a guy like Michael Chandler, man. So I agree with you guys, and I think that Michael Chandler is going to go ding, and ring his bell, man. And he's going to leap in there with one of those huge right straights. And I think it's going to be night-night for Tony Ferguson. If it's not an outright knockout, he's going to leap on him and swarm. Michael Chandler is great at swarming, and we're going to see him get him out of there. I'll say round one. I think it's just going to happen real quick because Michael Chandler, he comes, he likes to start fast. I know he said that he's going to try to be a little more composed, but that's also not really Michael Chandler's style. Michael Chandler brings some heat. And I think towards the end of round one, I think we're going to see him get him out of there. Are we unanimous again?
I think so.
Yeah, we're unanimous. Just quick to your point on Justin Gaethje, I also think that a lot of what Tony Ferguson was mental. I think in his own head for a long time, he 100% believed it was not possible for him to be beat. And then the way Justin drubbed him, I think, has affected him significantly and has affected the way he fought Oliveira and Dariush. He's even I saw that he is now training in the middle of the night because he said he realized that training in the day was letting people see what he does, and like he's just saying shit that's making you think this guy has been mentally broken a little bit. So I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
I was going to say that, well, just responding to that, just Ferguson's never been the quote-unquote normal guy. I'm pretty sure we could have a 2-day video compilation of all the weird shit that man has said over the years. And he's got some sound bites, man. I'm an ankle pick you. You know what I mean? Now this whole thing with I want to join pro baseball. Dana White's a drug lord and doesn't want to let me like do anything and is stopping me from boxing and all this other stuff. So Tony Ferguson is always on some shit. No matter what day, what time of the year it is, he's always on something. So his mental game has always been a factor for me as far as that part is concerned. And I do think Justin took something away from him. It very well might be something physical. It very well might be something mental. But he just seems like he's not with the shits anymore. Like he doesn't like playing this game anymore. He doesn't like. I don't even really know if he likes being in the UFC anymore. If he even really wants to fight anymore. I think Ferguson is in one of those positions where he may not have invested his money the right way, and so this is still something he needs to do. I do think Ferguson probably finds a lot more success outside of the UFC at this point. I'm down to be proven wrong. Like I always say, this is one of those sports where when I get proven wrong, it's because something absolutely miraculous has happened. So if that does happen, I'm always down for it. But it just seems like Tony Ferguson is kind of is not the same and won't be able to provide the same type of fight like he once used to. So,
okay.
Yeah.
All right, boys, let us move on to the co-main event, and what a co-main. By the way, real quick, this card, great card.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Great card.
Pretty friggin' deep. In the co-main event, we get Thug Rose Namajunas taking on Carla Esparza for the second time. That's right, this is a rematch. The two fought way back in late 2014 in what was the inaugural fight for the women's strawweight championship in the UFC. And that fight was won by Carla Esparza by submission via rear naked choke in round number 3. And all these years later, the title had changed hand a few times, and now Thug Rose is the champ once again. She's coming off of 3 consecutive wins against Andrade, winning that rematch, and then 2 fights against Zhang Weili. All 6 of Thug Rose's last fights are all rematches. She fought JJ twice, Andrade twice, and Weili twice. Carla Esparza, as I mentioned, was the first UFC women's strawweight champion, has since lost the belt. But she is streaking once again, riding a 5-fight win streak into this Saturday night, most recently getting a TKO victory against Yan Xiaonan back in May of 2021. Omar, let me start with you this time. What's your take on this historic rematch of Rose Namajunas and Carla Esparza, and ultimately give us your pick.
So we are just shy of about 8 years removed from that first fight, and they were both very different fighters back then. I would say Rose probably a lot more than Carla Esparza. Carla Esparza's game, for the most part, has stayed pretty much the same throughout her career. The reality is her wrestling, though, is relatively elite compared to most of the other women that are in that division. I think the person she had the real tough time against was Tatiana Suarez, who was not only bigger than her, but her wrestling was probably comparable to her as well. But, Rose has had a very successful career since losing to Carla Esparza. Really turned up the level in her game. Got with Trevor Whitman, like we know, and has been part of that little small class of fighters that has really taken everything to the next level. Her fights against Joanna and Cheick are legendary at this point. There will always be that argument whether JJ tapped or not to strikes, and I still say that she did. I think you can visibly see that she tapped to those strikes. She denies it to her dying breath, which I totally get. She was able to come back against that nasty slam from her head against Andrade and put an entire beating on her for the majority of that fight. The Weili Zhang fight, she was able to knock out a fighter who we thought was going to be one of the next big things in that division, and then solidified it with another decision after that, which was a hard-fought fight and a close fight. But Rose has come so far, and I think Rose's biggest issues have always been her mental fortitude and her ability to kind of make sure that she doesn't get in her own way, because I think skill for skill, she's always had the ability to beat anybody on that roster. So it's been nice to see her be able to kind of get everything in line, put everything together, including her mental game, and really find a lot of success. With all that being said, I think this is the time where she can beat Carla Esparza. And that's saying something, because Carla Esparza is a very consistent fighter, a very good fighter, and she's been elite for a long time. So I think Rose can get it done. I do think it's a very hard-fought fight. I do think it will be a very close fight. I think it will be 3-2, but I do think Rose wins it, unanimous decision.
All right, Mark, what are your thoughts on the rematch between Thug Rose and the Cookie Monster, Carla Esparza?
So Rose is favored. She's minus 210. Carla Esparza is plus 170. We get another rematch here. I think it's the third one that we've previewed tonight. What's crazy, though, is that a lot of new fans may not even realize this is a rematch. As you said, first time these two fought was back in 2014 when Carla choked out Rose to become the first strawweight champ. So it's a rematch that has been a long time coming, and one that I'm sure Rose is very excited to get back. But real quick, I want to give props to Carla for getting here, because when she dropped that belt to Joanna, and she dropped it bad, she got destroyed by Joanna. She then went 3-3 in her next 6 fights, and it kind of felt like, man, good thing Carla got to have that belt when this division was in its infancy, because she'd never be able to get it right now. And now here we are, 5 fights later, 5 straight wins over really good girls, and Carla's fighting for the title again. So that's awesome, and props to her on this run. I will say, kind of, Omar touched on this as well. As much as Carla has improved on this run, her striking is better, her aggression is better, her willpower, I would say, is stronger. She's still, in a nutshell, a similar fighter to what she was then. She still has the same game. What's crazy is that even though it's fairly one note and you know exactly what she's going to do, she somehow still does it against girls like Alexa Grasso and Marina Rodriguez and Zhang Yan. None of them have been able to do enough to stop it. And Rose can be taken down. We saw it against Weili more than once. Weili had some success with the wrestling, and Carla's a better wrestler than Weili is. But switching to Rose, again, as Omar touched on, she is an entirely different fighter now from what she was then. She barely even resembles the fighter that lost to Carla the first time. And I do think in that Weili fight that I just mentioned that a lot of that wrestling success was because of the threat Weili also posed on the feet. Whereas Carla is a straight wrestler. She poses no threat on the feet. And I don't think a straight wrestler can beat Rose anymore. I think Rose has evolved too far. I think her footwork has reached an almost untouchable level. Her movement, her confidence, and just the danger she presents are so different now from what they were the first time she fought Carla. And I think it's going to be a lot harder for Carla to bring her down. And even when and if it hits the ground, Rose is really good on the bottom as well, which she also showed against Weili. So it's just a tricky proposition for Carla. And the thing that I haven't even said yet is the main thing, which is that while Carla tries to navigate that footwork and find a takedown, she is going to be getting pieced apart by Rose. The skill gap on the feet is still pretty wide, and the power gap is pretty wide. And I think Carla is going to maybe feel a little overwhelmed whenever they're standing from what's coming back at her. So she absolutely deserves this shot. I'm glad she's getting it. It was a question for a little bit there. I'm glad to see the bookies respecting it. It's fairly close lines. I feel like sometimes Carla Esparza does not get the respect she deserves. But I don't think she can beat this Rose. I think Rose lands something big by round 3, maybe when they're in close, something in the clinch like an elbow. Esparza goes on wobbly legs. Rose finishes the job. Round 3, TKO.
Oh, what a pick. Yeah, this is a tough fight for me to pick because, like you said, I totally agree. I think Esparza is sort of underrated. I mean, she's a fantastic record. She's 18-6. She's tough to beat. She's a tough out. She's a tough girl. As good as Rose is, I don't see Rose getting Carla out of there, but I will have to go Rose by unanimous decision. I think she's going to clearly win on the feet. I don't think she's going to be able to stop the takedown because that's generally what the Cookie Monster does. The Cookie Monster eats. But I don't think the takedowns are going to be enough. I think Rose is going to neutralize her enough on the ground, threaten with some submissions, and ultimately get up in a few positions and do enough to win this fight by unanimous decision.
Dude, and
anything else you guys want to say about the co-main?
I feel bad for Carla Esparza because she's been putting off her wedding to get this fight, and so she's planning on having her wedding basically like right after this fight is over, and like I just don't see her winning. And I feel so bad having this girl have to go and get married, knowing she just got her ass beat for this title, and that part just sucks. I hope for the best for her
without a fucked up face.
Hopefully, yeah, I feel bad for her.
All right, boys, we made it. We have arrived to the main event of UFC 274, Oliveira versus Gaethje. In the lightweight division, we have Charles do Bronx Oliveira defending his UFC light heavyweight title against Justin the Highlight Gaethje. So we have Gaethje, the challenger, the 33-year-old, fighting out of Colorado. His record stands, one moment. His record stands at 23-3. Good Lord, what a record. With 19 wins coming by way of knockout. Add a submission in there for good measure. He's coming off of that barn burner victory against Michael Chandler back in November. My God, aside from Khabib, who defeated him back in October of 2020, he is 5 of his last 6, and he is very much deserving of this title shot. But it is no easy task. Charles Oliveira has earned it. As Dustin Poirier would say, he has paid in full. He is the 32-year-old fighting out of Brazil, of course. He is the submission expert. He has 41 fights on his record, 32-8, and 1 no contest. And he is on quite the tear in his career. He has won 10 fights in a row going into Saturday night. Most recently, of course, defeating Dustin the Diamond Poirier by rear naked choke back in December. Mark, let me start with you. What a main event. What a lightweight title fight. What do you make of it? And give us your pick.
I make of it that I love it. Oliveira is minus 175. Gaethje is plus 145. A lot of fights we've talked through on this episode tonight, but this one is the fight. We are locking 2 of the greatest finishers the sport of MMA has ever seen in a cage and seeing who comes out alive. And that is why we watch. I could talk about this fight for half an hour. I will do my best to not do that. Gaethje's been talking a lot about how he's going to break Charles in there, mentally and physically. And Justin has done that to plenty of people, so it's not impossible. But the Charles Oliveira that we are in the midst of right now is a stone-cold killer. He has won 10 fights in a row, and if it wasn't for Tony Ferguson being a psycho who doesn't tap to a broken arm, it would be 10 finishes in a row, which is just silly. And as close and competitive as this fight is, if you've been watching this show for any amount of time, you already know who I'm going to pick, and that's Charles Oliveira. I love Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje is an unbelievable fighter, but I think he is stepping in front of a man who can't be beat right now. And frankly, I think this fight is going to look pretty similar to the Dustin Poirier fight. I think Justin will come out hot. I think he may even hurt Charles in round 1, but Charles will be fine. He won't go away. And at some point in time, Gaethje gets caught up in the octopus that is Charles Oliveira. It really does feel like the guy has extra limbs once he gets into these grappling exchanges. Justin's only real range weapon is his leg kicks. All his punches are hooks and uppercuts and things in closer range. He's not the jab guy. And when it comes to those leg kicks, Charles is always really light on the front foot, so I don't know if Justin is going to be able to rip his legs with as much success as he's used to having. And if he has to be inside with Charles, that's just a wildly dangerous place to be because it's so easy to get wrapped up by him out of the blue. Plus, Justin has to be careful in all these exchanges not to be taken down, so he can't just throw with that wild abandon that he's able to in most of his other fights. And then, not to mention, Charles has nice range weapons himself, like his jab and his front kick, so I think he can almost use those to kind of dictate when he wants the range to open and close in this fight. Granted, Justin, you know how he is. He's going to try to crash through and walk forward, and he has said it. He said, there's one fight in my life where I made my game plan alter from continually walking forward, and it was the Khabib fight, and I'll never do it again in my life. So we know he's going to try to walk forward. I just think it's a tough matchup for him. I do think he can hurt Charles, but I think Charles can hurt him as well, and I think we see some violent exchanges. But I just think at a certain point it's too hard to keep Charles off you. I think maybe they're in an exchange. Charles shoots a double. Gaethje maybe like half stuffs it, but turns a little bit. Next thing you know, Charles is on his back, standing RNC. It's the same thing I predicted against Dustin, which was correct. But like I said, I think Justin and Dustin have similar weaknesses when matched up with Charles. I do think Justin can do it. I think his timing and his calm in the fire make him like extremely unique in his ability to finish people. And we know Charles can be hit. But I think Justin needs to fight a perfect fight to do it. And I think there's too much on the scale in Charles' favor. So, yeah, I will say at some point, Gaethje turns, when he shouldn't. Charles is on the back. Next thing you know, tapping, rear naked choke, and still Charles Oliveira. I'll say round 3.
Round 3, rear naked.
Omar didn't go yet if you want to save
Not a
yourself.
bad pick. Yeah, I know.
I thought you were going.
All right, Omar. Lay it on us.
I'm going to go the other direction. I think Justin
Gaethje's
hands, man, are terrifying. If there's a couple things that I think are going to be a fact in this fight, Charles Oliveira is going to get hit. That's a fact. Charles Oliveira is going to get rocked at some point. I also think that that's a fact. Where I think Charles Oliveira has excelled at this point is he doesn't quit anymore. And you can't tell me that man didn't quit in the past because you saw it all over his face right before he rolled over onto his side, waiting for the referee to come and stop that fight. He doesn't do that anymore. So, the bitch that lives inside of him, he's able to quell that guy, keep that down, and he's been able to fight through a lot of fires and come out on top. And he went through a little bit of that against the Chandler fight. That Chandler fight was not an easy fight for him to get through. Like he
Poirier wasn't either.
Facts. I mean, he walked through some shit for those fights, and I don't think the Oliveira from 7-8 years ago would have been able to do anything close to that. So there is something to be said definitely for the evolution of Charles Oliveira, but there's also something to be said for the evolution of Justin Gaethje because the man is the epitome of controlled chaos and probably the most controlled chaos in that entire UFC organization. His ability to be so destructive and disgustingly accurate with those hooks is something that is not normal and not something you see very often in any combat sport. Normally, people are using jabs to set things up and things like that. Justin is literally winging left and right hooks, but they're so damn accurate and they're so short. They're not these long looping hooks that come from he's here and then he's here. I mean, he's not wasting any energy. He's not wasting any distance, and he's very technical about the way he's been throwing his strikes. So I think he's got the gas for it, which is another thing that comes along with having to throw a lot of heavy hooks. We've seen Conor McGregor throw the heaviest of hooks, and by round 2, the man looks like he needs to take a nap. So I think Gaethje's not going to have that problem. I think he's got his gas under control. I think Oliveira's in for a rough night, but I think it's going to be a hell of a fight. I think Gaethje catches the chin, though. I'm going to go with third round KO.
Ooh. I have a different pick from both of you.
A draw?
What's that?
No contest, eye poke.
No contest. No contest.
Don't even speak that into existence,
Yeah, you're right.
man.
I shouldn't even have said that.
Oh, good God.
Oh, God.
So, I think something happened for Charles when he fought Tony. I think he unlocked a new level when he fought Tony, obviously. I mean, yes, 10 in a row. Prior to Tony, he submitted Kevin Lee. Prior to that, he knocked out Jared Gordon. So he really found his way into the upper echelon somewhat recently. Other than Tony, against Michael Chandler, he got dropped bad in the first round, almost got finished. Against Dustin Poirier, he got dropped in the first round. I think if he keeps testing fate and going up against these killers and these guys at the very top of the lightweight division who have huge power, who bring in a lot of firepower, I think the law of averages is going to catch up to him. Even though he has 10 fights in a row coming into Saturday night, I see Justin Gaethje having just as much, if not more, firepower than both of the guys that Oliveira just beat. And if and when Justin Gaethje catches him and will sting him in the first round, I'm going to say Justin Gaethje by TKO in round number 1. And will be and new, like the name of our show,
Boom.
And new UFC lightweight champ.
I also want to point out. I really quick want to point out that Justin Gaethje's footwork is also something that doesn't get talked about enough.
Yes.
As well as Charles Oliveira's newfound striking IQ. So Oliveira has implemented these knees in his game that are absolutely phenomenal. Whenever he gets into close distance, he throws really good knees, and these knees go right into the stomach and the solar plex of these guys, and it hurts them. It hurts them for sure. And these guys, their arms drop. That takes a little bit of gas out of them, and we continue. But he's been using that pretty consistently over the last few fights. With that being said, where I think the knee is actually going to play against him in this fight, because I think it's going to open him up to hooks from Justin Gaethje. The one thing that happens when he throws a lot of those knees is one of those arms is going to have to drop in order for him to throw it with a little bit of oomph to it. And I think Justin Gaethje is one of those guys that would eat that knee while throwing that hook at the same time, just because he'll see the opening. I expect that to be something to look out for. I think that might be a vulnerability that I don't know if Oliveira is considering.
Okay.
I love both of your guys' breakdowns. I fully agree that round 1 is the danger round. I think Charles absolutely needs to find a way to survive round 1. I agree that of everyone Charles has fought, if you take Chandler, Dustin Gaethje, the guy who I think, you're saying, oh, he got caught by all of them. Of all of them, the guy who could catch him and not let him off the hook, I think, is Justin Gaethje. Mm-hmm. I also think, though, that Charles is going to have a 4-inch reach advantage, and that he may be the one hurting Gaethje in a lot more of these exchanges than people think. Mm-hmm. And, yeah, as I said, I'm going to roll with him. But, yeah, it's a great freaking fight.
Either way, can't wait. This is the kind of fight that even thinking about it right now gives me palpitations. Like my heart starts to race when I think about the moment right when they're about to when whoever the ref is going to be is about to say, "Fight, are you ready? Are you ready? Let's fight." I'm going to be heart pounding out of my chest.
Yeah.
I would pay $70 just to watch them two fight if there was no other card involved.
Yeah, man. And this card is sick.
I wouldn't even think twice.
Oh, my God. All right.
Yeah.
That does it, boys. We have previewed UFC 274, Oliveira versus Gaethje. Thank you so much, guys. And let's finish up with a little bit of trivia. Here we go. Are you ready?
Let's do
Ready.
Okay. This Saturday night, headlined by the lightweight champ Charles Oliveira. He holds multiple UFC records, most notably the most submission wins in the organization's history. How many finishes does Charles Oliveira have? Is it A, 14, B, 17, C, 19, or D, 18?
So this is finishes, as in including strikes.
All
Not just
finishes. Most finishes in UFC history.
All right, forget the letters. Just tell me the number choices again.
14, 17, 19, or 18?
Why are the numbers out of order? I will go 19.
Pure fuckery on Mike's part. What did you go with? I'm gonna go with 17. What did you go with?
I went with 19. I think it's 18 or 19. I'm just not sure which, but we'll see. Maybe you're right.
17 does sound like a weird ass number.
But anyway, I said 19.
17 final answer.
Are you going to tell us the answer?
The answer is D, 18.
Ah, shit.
18 finishes. 15 by submission. My God.
That's wild.
That is crazy. All right. Follow-up question.
Savage.
Here we go. Follow-up question. Who holds
Well,
the
I said 19 because I was counting the one against Gaethje that's coming up.
Oh my
Very good.
God.
All right, follow-up question. Who holds the UFC record for most finishes in title bouts? Is it A, Matt Hughes, B, Demetrius Johnson, C, Anderson Silva, or D, Ronda Rousey? Honda Housey.
Fuck, I started reading something and I didn't listen to the choices.
Okay.
I was
Is it,
reading something about Charles.
Who holds the record for most finishes in title fights in the UFC? Matt Hughes, Demetrius Johnson, Ronda Rousey, or Anderson Silva?
Is this UFC only? I'm assuming.
Yes.
In UFC title fights, Matt Hughes, Demetrius Johnson, Ronda Rousey, or Anderson Silva.
Most finishes in title fights. Ooh, this is a good question. I made this up myself.
See, it's an interesting question because it's the choices you gave are kind of unique.
Well, I mean, I just chose like 4 of the top in that category.
Are they?
Yes.
All 4 of them are near the very top of that category?
Seems like
All
DJ
4 of them
had a ton
all
of
4 of them
decisions.
have a lot of finishes in title fights.
That's what happens, I guess, when DJ has 12 fucking title defenses.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess.
He could have like 6 decisions and still have 6 finishes for him too. And so I feel like Silva did pretty much wreck everybody with the exception of but some of them were at light heavyweight, so they weren't even title defenses.
I'm thinking the same thing. 2 finishes that I can think of were light heavyweight.
The Damian Maia one wasn't a finish.
Nope. Talis Lates wasn't a finish. Man, could it be Ronda? I'm trying to think how many times Ronda won, and they were all by fucking finish.
I think in the UFC though, it was only ended up being like 3 or 4.
No, it was more than that.
Carmouche, the girl she flipped over and busted her face open.
It was like, it had to be 5 or 6. It was more than 3 or 4.
Do you guys have any guesses?
We're figuring it out, Mike. We became a team on this one.
Good.
Man, I'm torn. I am struggling.
I want to
will
say
go
DJ
with-
now.
I'm going to go with Anderson Silva.
Final answers?
Yeah.
I guess I'll go with DJ.
All right. The answer is Anderson, the Spider, Silva.
Fuck.
All right.
What are the
Final
numbers?
follow-up. I have not told you the number. Whoever can guess closest will win the final answer here. So Anderson, how many title victories by finish? Whoever can guess closest.
7.
Yeah, that was my guess. 7.
The answer is 9.
Wow. Good for him.
Jesus Christ.
What a fucking animal.
Yeah, he has
What are the
9.
numbers?
Matt Hughes had 8 title wins by
8
finish.
title wins by finish? Wow.
DJ had
Doesn't feel like
7. DJ had 7, and Ronda had 6.
Ronda did have 6. Okay.
John Jones is the next guy, and Amanda Nunes. Both are active, though. Both are tied with Ronda with 6 title finishes.
So wait, that's literally the top 4 of the list that you
That
gave
is
us?
correct. That is correct.
Wow.
George St. Pierre, Frank Shamrock, Randy Couture, BJ Penn, and Chuck Liddell all have 5 finishes in title fights.
That's way more than I thought GSP had.
But GSP also had like a billion
Won
title
so
fights.
many. Yeah.
I have a trivia question for you.
Oh, baby.
Oh, baby.
Since we've been doing so well on time, why not? Justin Gaethje, the man on the marquee this week as far as headlining this card here, the man has 3 decisions on his record. One is all 3 of them are victories. His last one was to Michael Chandler. Who are the other 2
Decision victories?
in his career? He's only had
He
3
only-
decisions.
Oh, my God.
Every other fight is a knockout or a
He won by
submission.
knockout.
I mean, are they people that we know, or is it like before he was on the large scene?
One of them you should at least one of them you should know.
Okay. A win
matter
by
of fact,
decision.
I will give you the first decision win that he ever had was against Marcus Edwards.
Yeah, so
And
we have no
in,
idea.
That was in 2012. The next person that he had a decision win over, you should know. And it was a split decision in World Series of Fighting.
I know it's in World Series of Fighting because I know that Chandler was his first decision in the UFC. But I just can't think of who it would have been.
No. I never really followed WSOF that close, so I don't know.
All right, let's give you some options then. Let's give you a little list here. We're gonna go. Let's go. Dan Lozon, A. Melvin Goulart, B.
No.
Luis Palomino, C.
Yes.
Or Brian Foster, D.
Luis Palomino.
I don't know who that is.
Any guesses, Mike?
Lozon.
The answer is Melvin Goulart
Really?
by split decision, 2014.
Melvin Goulart fought Justin Gaethje to a split decision. Holy shit.
Did. Yeah.
Yeah, like how? Wow, yeah, I don't know that fight. I do not know that fight.
I think it's insanity that this man's record is 23-3, and he's only had decisions, 3 decisions, and they're all wins, and that's the only thing to talk about. He's got all KOs, all TKOs, all his losses are by finishes. The man doesn't go to a decision unless he absolutely 100% has to.
Are they?
So crazy.
Now that I'm really, I kind of said it in my breakdown that they're 2 of the best finishers we've ever seen. But are they literally the number 1 and 2 percentage finishers? Because it kind of feels like they could be.
It's very possible.
You might be right.
They both finish every damn fight.
Yeah.
I think Oliveira's finish rate. What's his record? Anybody have it right there?
Oliveira is 32-8. That's fucking
He's
bad.
32-8.
Yep.
Not in the UFC. That's overall.
Oh,
Yes.
I'm talking UFC finish rate because obviously we don't know the.
Jesus, he's been in the UFC for so long though. At this point, it doesn't even. I mean, why not just count them all?
True. So what's he have in the UFC? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Wait, why did I just count 18 finishes? Oh, no, that is what you said. 18 finishes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you magically said 19.
I said 19 before, yeah. So he has 18 out of 20.
That's 90%.
That's ridiculous.
And Gaethje obviously has a lot less fights, but his would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So his would only be 5 out of 6. So I guess maybe he wouldn't be second on the list. But if you factor in his whole career, his rate is basically the same as Charles' rate.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. That's why they are where they are.
Yeah, crazy.
All right, gentlemen, let us bring this show to a close. For those who are joining us on YouTube, thank you so much. Drop a comment in our comments below and let us know any of the takes that you agree with or disagree with. We want to hear it all. Comments, concerns, feedback. We love it all. Thank you guys for watching. Find us wherever you get your podcasts if you want audio only. And, of course, join the conversation on social at @andnew_MMA show everywhere. Fun show, guys. Folks, enjoyed the fights this weekend. Boys, any parting shots?
This card is so fucking good. Like I can't even wait right now.
Yeah, man.
War Cowboy, War Shogun, War Charles.
Let's go.
Try never die.
All right, folks. See you next week. Enjoy the fights. Peace.
Peace.